Ted Texter has been tracking the progress of Hurricane Andrew throughout the early afternoon and evening. He joins us now with an update. Ted?
Andre, indeed, these areas are, of course, under watch or warning, both hurricane and tropical storm, about the southern two-thirds of the peninsula of Florida. We want to go now to Coral Gables, Florida, where we're joined by Dr. Bob Sheets, who is the director of the National Hurricane Center there. And Dr. Sheets, thank you for taking the time with us again. I know you're a very busy man tonight. Now, you, in addition to being quite an expert in weather, are also, or have become quite an expert in evacuation paths in the major population centers, also in architecture. One of the plans, I know, is to evacuate up. You're about to take a hit from a very strong, a direct hit from a very strong hurricane. Is up an alternative in this case in Miami Beach?
Well, we talk about what we call last resort refuge, not really evacuation, vertical evacuation, but a last resort refuge in situations where you get trapped. And so if you do get trapped on the Florida Keys, barrier islands, then you take refuge above the storm surge level and in the interior rooms, maybe the second floor.
Now, I know for the past some years you've been the director there. You perhaps have been called Chicken Little at times because you've been saying, and your colleagues have been saying, that the big one's coming, the big one's coming. And indeed, here it is tonight. We are waiting on it. We're already seeing some effects of it. Is the area prepared? Is the United States prepared, the Southeast Coast prepared for this?
Well, I think we're certainly much better prepared than we were a decade ago. Neil Frank started a lot of this several years ago. I've continued that, and had it not been for those actions, we would not have been prepared for this. Are we totally prepared for a hurricane like that? No way. I don't think anybody can prepare for a major hurricane Category 4, Category 5.
It's been a couple of years since I've been there, but as I recall, you're on the 6th or 7th floor. You're the only floor on that building that has hurricane storm shelters on your, or storm flaps on your windows. Have many more been constructed lately?
No, we have the shutters all the way around, so we're sort of encapsulated, and I think we have them closed all the way around. I'm looking at the last two windows. Perhaps we've kept those open until we see the wind start to pick up. So yes, we're encapsulated here, and we'll ride it out right here. Okay,
we stay here in the safety of Atlanta, Georgia. We'll be keeping in touch with you, of course, and we wish you the best of luck. We will be back with more news and information in just a moment after these breaks. Steve, please stay with us.
CNN Headline News, I'm Bob Lozier. Andrew is coming, and southern Florida is expecting the worst. More than 1 million people have been advised to evacuate because of Hurricane Andrew. The National Hurricane Center in suburban Miami is in the massive storm's path. We go there now for the latest data on Andrew, and here's an update from forecaster Bob Sheets in Miami.
Good evening. Hurricane Andrew continues to move on its course towards southeast Florida. At this hour, the center of the hurricane is located about 170 miles east of Miami. The center of the hurricane is also showing some signs that perhaps the winds may be decreasing slightly. Some increase in strength may be possible, some decrease over the next few hours. On our radar, we're seeing the eye of the hurricane now coming here through the Bahamas. The outer rings have already moved across our coast here with some of the rain bands here. The core of the hurricane, the stronger part of the hurricane, will be approaching the coast sometime after midnight tonight. I'm Bob Sheets from the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida.
Much of the Florida peninsula is now under storm advisories. A hurricane warning covers the southern tip from Venice to Vero Beach. Hurricane watches are in effect farther northward, covering the Tampa and Cape Canaveral areas. Right now, Andrew is less than 170 miles east of Miami and heading for the South Florida coastline. High tide is expected in Miami early Monday morning. Forecasters expect Andrew will be stronger than Hurricane Hugo, which hit South Carolina 3 years ago. Incoming flights are now being diverted around Miami International Airport because of Andrew. Some people in that area have fled northward to Orlando, renting all available rooms at the Walt Disney World complex. Brian Cabell has more on the hurricane preparations.
The world-famed pool at the Fontainebleau Hilton in Miami Beach had a distinctively eerie look as Andrew approached. No tourists, lounges purposely submerged. Up and down the beach, the mandatory evacuation was in effect. At Ely's and Ailey's discount store, the owners weren't confident that much would be left in the morning.
Not much. The water's going to be about 12 feet high. The water's going to be up to here.
Down the street, workers were securing the France Bijou clothing store, but observed that not everybody was taking Andrew seriously.
Not yet. But after this one, the new generation, like them, they will learn.
Residents were learning that gas and other goods were in short supply. The entire Casanova family, babies on up, were ready to move inland.
We were thinking about staying until noon. And then pressure from relatives, the TV, the radio said, well, this is pretty serious, so
Get out of town.
get out of town.
Karen Leonard wasn't quite ready to leave. She wanted a last look at the beach, the blue-green water, the swaying palms.
Been through hurricanes before, so I'm not in shock because of it, but I mean, I know it's going to get bad, but right now it's kind of hard to believe.
Kind of hard to believe, and yet apparently inevitable.
As is so often the case, the cliche fits. This is the calm before the storm. But take a look behind me. If the forecasters are right, this will look radically different on Monday morning. Brian Cabell, CNN, Miami Beach.
Hurricane Andrew is already battering the Bahamas. One island had wind gusts this afternoon of 120 miles an hour, and one woman told CNN of homes completely underwater. The Bahamas News Bureau had an early report of 4 people killed from the storm. Miami television reporter Michael Williams called his station from the Bahamas about 2 hours ago.
The best way I could describe it is think of the hurricane footage you've seen over the years with the furious-looking ocean, the slate gray skies, the palm trees bending, and that's exactly what I'm staring out outside of a window right now. We're told there was tremendous damage, power lines down as expected on Eleuthera, about 50 miles to 70 miles northeast of here, and now the storm's headed this way. We expect the eye, according to everything we've been told here, to pass about 30 miles north of Nassau within the next hour to 3 hours. My information is not terribly precise at this point, but we're battening down the hatches. People have taken to the hotels. Most of the islanders are trying to ride it out in their homes. There are some shelters opened. They never believed that the storm would pass this close. Now they can hardly believe that they are stuck in the middle of it, and all they can do is pray that they'll come out of it all right. I can barely see very far out of my window, and believe it or not, this is kind of hard to describe. The wind seems so powerful that it's pushing the water on shore, but it's almost flattening the waves out because the wind is just so powerful. It's as though it keeps the caps on the waves from coming up anymore. It's just pushing it more inland than high waves now. But
can we hear it again? Can you put your microphone up to the window and let us hear once again?
This is somewhat a muted sense of what I'm hearing.
Because it's behind the window, right? Wow. Well, that's what we face, folks.
Stay tuned to Headline News for the latest information on Hurricane Andrew. A while
The first bands of rain come ashore on the east coast of Florida, but the worst is yet to come from powerful Hurricane Andrew.
Millions of South Floridians prepare for what could be the most destructive hurricane to hit the area in decades.
A late update of the day's news. This is World News on CNN with David French in Washington and Andrea Arsenault at CNN Center in Atlanta.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. The first hurricane of the Atlantic season could be one of the most destructive in decades, and Hurricane Andrew is headed straight for Florida. In Miami so far, the effects of Hurricane Andrew are evident in the rough ocean and the first rainfall. But powerful winds and heavy rainfall are yet to come. A state of emergency exists in southern Florida, as do hurricane warnings along both the Atlantic and Gulf Coast. As many as 1 million people are fleeing Hurricane Andrew's potential force. About 150 Red Cross shelters in the Miami area are ready to take in evacuees, and some facilities already are filled to capacity. Residents in low-lying areas of 3 counties have been ordered to evacuate: Broward and Dade, which includes Miami, and Monroe, which includes the Florida Keys. Hurricane Andrew already is blowing over the Bahamas, where 4 people are reported killed. A hurricane warning also is posted in Cuba. And now to get a look when weather storm is located and how it's progressing, here's Ted Texter. Ted?
Andrea, the updates are coming much more frequently now. We have this latest that the storm is centered, the eye is centered 150 miles to the east of Miami, Florida. And you can see the progress the storm is making. Perhaps we shouldn't use the word progress, the advancement that it is making to the west. The storm still packing 145 mile-per-hour winds. Earlier, 150 was the best estimation from the central pressure. but it looks as if now it's vacillating just a little bit, dying off a little bit, gaining strength. It is predicted to gain more strength as it does move on into the Gulf Stream. Its position now is just a little bit to the north and west of Nassau in the Bahamas. It will likely continue on that westerly course. It has been all night long, a very true westerly course. We want to remind you as well, hurricane warnings continue from Vero Beach on down through Miami, through the Keys, on back to the Dry Tortugas as well, on up to Venice, and then north of there on up to Bayport on the Gulf side. It's very important to stress on the Gulf side the hurricane warnings continue. The tropical storm warnings then pick up and continue on up to Bayport. Also, a hurricane watch continues in this hatched area and on the East Coast. Terribly deadly storm this could be. Already it may have been. We'll keep track of it throughout this evening and stay with you, of course. Now for more news of the day. David French in Washington, D.C.
And what irony, CNN's John Zarrella is standing by in a calm Miami to keep us updated on the situation there. John, what are you thinking about?
Well, David, I'm thinking about how long will it be before the core of that storm, before those tropical storm force winds finally reach us here. Behind me, we're within the evacuation zone. To let everybody know where we are, about a mile from here is Biscayne Boulevard, US 1. Many people are familiar with this area. We're within the evacuation zone. Everything east of this is supposed to be evacuated. It is dead quiet here. You can see there's a police car behind me. They've been stopping cars all night. Few people leaving, asking people what they need to be over on the beach area for, which is right over the causeway here in front of me. Here it is very, very quiet. Other places, probably about the same, maybe a little different. Thank goodness people off the streets. With me is CNN's Charles Jaco. And CD, what was it like? You've been out all night roaming the streets. Streets quiet like this?
Streets are dead calm, John, just the same as they are here. We were in downtown Miami, where there's literally no one on the streets. We were in Overtown, an area, of course, that was ripped by riots a few years ago, and there were quite a few people out on the streets there, but they weren't doing a great deal, just milling around. So far, the streets are practically deserted. We expect the first tropical storm force winds to be hitting here in about an hour, maybe 2 hours at the most. Meanwhile, a lot of people were doing a lot of last-minute shopping. They were gathering up groceries. Even at this late hour, you can still find a few supermarkets in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area open. People buying water, people buying canned goods, because, of course, the power and the water are going to go out when the storm hits. But amazingly enough, we also found a lot of people just were not planning to leave.
And it's gone through the 1938 hurricane. And so we figure we're better here than going to a shelter when all the people in the shelter, and they full and they turning them out.
They're running out of food too.
And they're running out of food, so the wife and I said, to hell, we'll stay here.
So right now, as you can see behind us, it is very calm right here. We're understanding from the National Hurricane Center, though, that the first tropical storm force winds, and you're far more the expert on this than I, and those are what, winds of above about 39, 40 miles an hour. Are supposed to hit here maybe in an hour, maybe less, maybe more. And we understand the landfall should come
about daybreak, a little bit after. Where the eye hits, they wobble as they hit the coast, so who knows exactly where the landfall is likely to be. Charles and I will be here throughout the night here, other places, every place we can get to bring you the latest news as Hurricane Andrew, a very dangerous and powerful hurricane, approaches and ultimately hits the coast of Florida. This is John Zarrella with Charles Jaco reporting live from North Miami.
Thank you, John and Charles. Hurricane Andrew has already ripped into the Bahamas. The eye of the storm passed over the northern part of the island of Eleuthera about 6 p.m. Eastern. The last report from the area 2 hours ago said power was out, and many streets and houses were said to be flooded by about 2 feet of water. There are reports 4 people died on either Eleuthera or another outer island, but that cannot be confirmed.
Let's see what we can get as to the latest of the situation in the Bahamas. We go now to Yvette Stewart of ZNS Bahamas Television. She is standing by in Nassau, the capital of the Bahamas. Yvette, what can you tell us?
Well, we are getting some more reports out of the island of Eleuthera, where you said that the hurricane first hit here in the Bahamas. We're getting reports now. Earlier we said that there was some damage. We did not say exactly the extent of that damage, but we're getting more reports in now. We understand that on Current Island in Eleuthera, that the damage was severe there. There were about 30 homes on that island. We understand that only 6 are standing. We understand that the telephone station in that area has also been destroyed. In Ocean View, we understand that 12 homes were destroyed. And we also understand that the damage was severe in Governor's Harbor, another area in Eleuthera. But luckily, we understand that some of those houses were evacuated. We understand that some are winter residences, and so fortunately there were no injuries involved in those damages.
And Yvette, are conditions such that people are starting to move around outside, or is the wind still up?
Well, I don't know if that is the case in Eleuthera, because we also reported earlier that there was heavy flooding in that area, making it difficult to move about. There were reports that the water was up to waist high, and that there was a lot of flooding in the area, water even getting into cars. So I don't know if too many people will be up and about on that island right now.
12 feet high, that means that water which was down around your shoe tops is 12 feet above that. That's a frightening concept. Joining us now on the phone is Debbie Bartlett, a telecommunications official in Governor's Harbor on Eleuthera Island. You just heard that report, I hope. What can you tell us from your vantage there?
Okay, about 12 homes have been demolished in an area known as Ocean View, and that's about 3 miles north of Governor's Harbor. With me is the Commissioner of Governor's Harbor. His name is Livingston Smith. He describes the damage as severe.
I would say that the damages are quite severe. That is to say that the homes, either the roofs are blown off or the walls are caved in. The furnitures are thrown all over the place, and there's very little that can be done at this time.
Commissioner Smith, we had
I want to say that these homes are owned by residents from other countries, and so they're winter residents, and of course some by natives. Of course, we are in the central Bahamas, that's where Governor's Harbor is, but we understand up in the northern Eleuthera it was even more severely hit, and up until now we have not been able to contact some of those settlements, namely James Cistern, Hatchet Bay, and Gregory Town, because of flooded roads and downed casuarina trees. The power is still out pretty much over all of Eleuthera. Power is out, and the only thing that is operational at this point is the emergency generator, and that's where we are in the Bahamas Telecommunications building. Telephone lines, of course, are down. I believe it is safe to say that this is perhaps the only telephone line that is operational at the moment. And one of the other very interesting and important observations is that a lot of the residents are not able to sleep at home tonight because of the water that is waist deep in most of the areas. And so I must say, though, that the worst of the storm is over. We still have and are experiencing some high winds, but that's about it.
We thank you very much, Debbie Bartlett, there, and also to Commissioner Smith and to Debbie Bartlett, our three reporters, as it were, friends in the Bahamas, where apparently the northern part of the islands got hit the worst. We just heard the reports that several homes have been pretty badly damaged, roofs torn off, and in some areas water still is waist deep and perhaps higher. Andrea.
CNN Headline News, I'm Bob Lozier. Hurricane Andrew is sending thousands of people in South Florida packing. More than 1 million people have been ordered to evacuate their homes before Andrew comes ashore early tomorrow. It's currently about 150 miles east of Miami with winds of 140 miles an hour. 5,000 people are holed up in Red Cross emergency shelters for the night. Warnings and watches have been issued from Bayport, Florida on the Gulf Coast, south to Key West and north to Titusville on the Atlantic coast. Andrew already ripped through the Bahamas with 120-mile-an-hour winds and kicking up fierce waves. It's the first hurricane to hit the nation in 50 years. It caught a lot of people off guard. 4 people were reported killed on one of the easternmost islands. The eye of the storm passed over the northern end of Eleuthera about 6 o'clock tonight. Mike Williams is reporting from Nassau.
Eleuthera, which is to the northeast of us by 70 miles, apparently has really gotten hammered. And even though right now we seem to not be getting it quite as bad, or it hasn't gotten much worse in the last half hour. Eleuthera took it really bad east of us in the Bahama Islands, the Bahamian chain, and a lot of the other islands have really taken it bad. So as a group, they sure have been getting hammered here, and we don't want to discount the fact that this storm's caused a lot of havoc in this area.
Thousands hit the road early Sunday morning obeying an evacuation order for the Florida Keys and low-lying areas. All federal disaster response units were activated to assist areas of Florida threatened by the hurricane. Florida Governor Lawton Chiles issued a state of emergency as Andrew grew to a Category 4 hurricane. Miami Beach is expected to bear the brunt of the storm. Some surfers ignored police whistles and bullhorns and paddled out to catch more waves. As Hurricane Andrew bears down on the Florida coastline, some residents of the Miami Beach area are choosing an option that could be deadly. They're refusing to leave their homes. Carlos Harrison reports.
Some of these places right across from the water have taken just the minimal precautions, and people are planning to stay. They've taped the windows, and that's about all they've done. There, the owner inside says they're securing the building, but they have no plans to leave. They say you have to leave.
But I live here.
You are, what, 200 yards from the water?
About that, yeah. Give or take an inch.
I was out there on the bridge a little while ago, and the wind came by so strong it about blew me off the bridge. But we're not going to be stupid about it. We're going to go and lock ourselves in the back of the motel. All right. We got everything we need back there.
Why don't you go someplace else?
Figure we just go down with the ship. We got all our stuff here. You know, all you got is what you have in your house. You really don't want to lose it.
I'm from Philadelphia myself, and I've never lived through anything like this. I have no idea what to expect or what could happen, but I just think it couldn't possibly be that bad.
You understand how strong this storm is, sir? Then what makes you think you can just stay and be okay?
Just as well off here. I got some tents, and I'm not going to leave them.
For the most part, you can still see some cars leaving here, trying to get out of Surfside. The wind's picking up, but if you can take a look up there, you can see that most people at least, are taking the warnings very seriously and are evacuating the beach. At least these places that are right on the beach. But there were still some diehards who refused to leave the beach, no matter how close they are to the water, and no matter how dark the skies become.
Stay tuned to Headline News for the latest information on Hurricane Andrew. Rescuers.
WFTV Orlando. Live from Channel 9, Central Florida's news leader. Bob Opsahl, Marla Weech, Danny Trainer's weather, and Pat Clark with sports. This is Eyewitness News Tonight.
Good evening. Hurricane Andrew is now about 8 hours from the South Florida coast.
And winds are still howling at about 145 miles per hour. Dr. Bob Sheets has the latest live from the Hurricane Center in Miami.
Good evening. Hurricane Andrew continues to move on its westward course towards southeast Florida. The eye of the hurricane is expected to cross the Miami area somewhere around 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. The outer bands of the hurricane are now coming across South Florida. Those continuous bands, heavy rain, strong winds will be moving across the coast here around 2 to 3 a.m. this morning. I'm Bob Sheets from the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida.
As you heard, South Florida is Hurricane Andrew's main target, and hundreds of thousands of residents have evacuated.
Many of them came here to Central Florida, and we'll have more on that in just a moment as we take you around the state with our live team coverage. But we begin with reporter Greg Wayland of our Florida News Network, who joins us live from Miami. Greg?
Well, I detect just the slightest change in the air here in Miami tonight, and once again, the headline says it all. The big one. This is the special edition of the Miami Herald that hit the streets tonight. The hurricane of our nightmares, it says, is knocking on the front door. And I venture to say you could knock on any door in Miami tonight and find no one home. We took a ride earlier this evening and found nothing but desolation. The empty downtown belonged to the police. They moved slowly, block by block, checking the shuttered doorways and the crisscross taping on lighted windows. All the rest is just damp, bright, and deserted. A few crews put up some of the last aluminum shutters. Otherwise, a city of colorful, beaming skyscrapers was sinister and bleak tonight. The homeless have an encampment just off Biscayne Boulevard. Shelters are crowded. As we watched, one of the last planes rose out of Miami International. At a gas station and convenience store on Dixie Highway, supplies were low at about 9 o'clock.
We're going to be open for about another hour or so. As soon as the wind starts coming in, we start, closing.
How busy has it been today?
Very, very busy. We run out of water, beer, you name it, everything.
Gasoline?
Gasoline.
Chet Alexander got gas, but no plywood to protect his home in Kendall. You're going to be boarded up? You're going to be covered up?
Well, we couldn't get the stuff we needed to board up.
So what are you going to do now?
We got some things done, though. You know, we took the precautions we could.
Everyone has been taking what precautions they could. Most people got to the store early today. Even this edition of the Herald is full of helpful hints of what to do after the storm. But I do detect the wind picking up here, and the preparations are underway all up the East Coast tonight. For more on that, we go to Ross Cavett, who's in Pompano Beach. Ross?
Thank you, Greg. The conditions here, as you mentioned, are changing slightly. We have had more winds, a little sprinkle here and there, a little indication of what's to come. Generally, the calm before the storm. The encouraging thing here in Pompano Beach is the fact that people seem to have heeded the warnings to evacuate. Behind me, very few people here, a few people checking out the beach. A large condo complex evacuated. The Howard Johnsons here evacuated. As we look here to the downtown Pompano Beach area, you can tell that people will be waiting this hurricane out somewhere other than home.
I can tell you right now, everything on the beach is closed. If you're looking for something on the beach, you know what I'm talking about?
A lone cop patrols a deserted downtown Pompano Beach. Some predicted coastal residents would not heed calls to evacuate, but this place is largely a ghost town, except for the Oceanside supermarket. The market stayed open so late, workers almost ran out of time to board it up.
Yeah, we had a big rush today. They were wiped all the shelves. Everything's gone.
Meanwhile, out on the beach, police were not enforcing the mandatory evacuations, meaning the curious and the foolhardy could wander around.
Maybe it's the last time it's going to be like this for a while, you know, because the erosion and all that stuff. So I just wanted to see, you know, just check it out, you know, just like that.
I'm not going to stay around for this, but car's packed, and I just want to look at this one more time. Hopefully it'll be like this when I come back.
3 people over here.
3 people here.
Okay. Those with more common sense flooded one of hundreds of area shelters. Some of the folks were in shock. Others took the whole thing in stride.
I had planned to stay at home, but the more I listened to the news, I figured it was time to get out.
We're getting some pretty gusty winds here now in Pompano Beach, but the encouraging part is not many people are experiencing them. Most everybody has evacuated, and I say most because this large condo complex behind me here, if you look very closely in the center, one condo is lit up, and we've seen somebody poke their head out of that window, so somebody up there is going to ride the storm out in their condo. Let's say goodbye to that guy, and hello to Mark Lodato. He's in Fort Myers with more from the West Coast. Mark.
Ross, Southwest Florida is saddled with one of the longest evacuation timetables in the state. That's because we sit at the very bottom of the state and it takes everyone longer to get up north. Interstate 75 has been busy throughout the day, sometimes stop and go, as thousands head north in search of shelter. Heeding the recommended or mandatory evacuations, thousands of Southwest Florida's Barrier Island residents head north and inland in search of a safe haven, only to find a highway crowded with cars from Florida's east coast and motels filled with guests and bracing for wind gusts of up to 150 miles per hour.
Not so much disappointed, more worried about where to go and where could I send them. And that's been the toughest part of the whole thing, because I don't know where to send them. I've called all over from here to, like I said, Gainesville, Tallahassee, and everybody's full.
Andy Pine traveled to Fort Myers from the tiny Everglades town of Okeechobee.
Yeah, it wasn't really bad at all. Coming up the roads, light traffic. I think I got out right in time because we didn't mess around.
But some weary travelers weren't so fortunate, like Fort Lauderdale's Kenneth Harvey, who had a reservation down the street.
I'm afraid not, sir.
Do you know any hotel that could have one?
I don't in the immediate area. The only thing I could suggest would be going up to 41 and heading north.
This is part of living down here. If you're going to be scared to live down here for this particular reason, you shouldn't be here.
Now, this highway is expected to be busy throughout the night as last-minute evacuees head north, as Andrew as well heads west. That's the latest from Fort Myers. Now back to you.
All right, thank you, Mark, Ross, and Greg. And that wraps up what's going on in South Florida at this hour. But what about here? What can we expect from Hurricane Andrew?
Let's find out from Danny Trainer. He joins us now live from the weather map. Danny, what are the latest coordinates?
Thank you, Bob and Marla. It looks as though this may be called the third greatest storm, strongest storm of this century. It is stronger than Hugo. It is not quite as strong as Hurricane Camille. I'll get out of the way so you can see the progress of the storm as it moves closer and closer to the eastern shore of Florida. We did not give you the hurricane coordinates as of yet. Let's do that now. 25.4 north, 78.1 west, highest winds 135 miles an hour. That's right, it has lost some intensity. It is still moving toward the west at 16 miles an hour. It is approximately 135 miles east of Miami. It is still continuing directly toward the Miami and Homestead area, and it looks as though, as Bob Sheets mentioned just a moment ago, that potential landfall in the morning is at 8 a.m. That's 8 a.m. between Miami and Homestead, and then crossing over the southern tip of Florida and out into the Gulf of Mexico, where it becomes a brand new story. Also here, locally, we can expect some very gusty winds of 40 miles an hour or above, a lot of heavy rain, possibly up to 3 inches, and a tornado watch is now in effect here in central Florida, including Brevard County, Indian River County, Brevard County, Osceola County, on over to Manatee and DeSoto County, and counties south. And that is in effect until 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. So we do expect the rains to be moving into the area sometime tonight and then continuing throughout the morning hours. So do expect it to be a rather blustery day. And then in the afternoon tomorrow, we should start to see some partial clearing. But in the meantime, there is a tornado watch in effect until 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we will reiterate this again later on in the program. Again, the storm is expected to landfall between Homestead and Miami at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'll have more for you, and of course the local forecast. And remember, we have a special on hurricane tonight at 12 midnight, so please roll those tape recorders. This is one you're going to want to keep and look at again and again. They just sent an airplane out there only 25 minutes ago, but you can already start to see the eye of the hurricane from the Miami radar. We will take you and give you a look at that Miami radar.
Very compact.
Right, and we are starting to get some bands of showers approaching the Vero Beach area. So as of this point on, you're going to see the weather start to deteriorate, and it is going to be rather crummy tomorrow morning when you get ready to go to school or to work.
And
that'll probably be the peak hours for us. Morning hours in terms of
and then
what the
things will start to
hurricane will do,
improve, say about 11 o'clock on into the afternoon. Things should start to improve around here. But the ground is saturated. It's soggy. The rain cannot soak in. If we get 3 inches of rain, 2 inches causes street flooding, and people are, bogged down.
Yeah.
So we're going to have maybe 3 inches of rain in some spots. So it is going to be very, very moist. And the further south of Orlando you get, the stronger the storms you're going to be running into as far as thunderstorms and the possibility of tornadoes. Tornadoes will be a possibility all throughout this entire storm.
Let me ask you something. We noticed that it has also slowed down in its movement down to 16 miles an hour now, and once it gets over land, I assume it's going to slow even more.
Yeah.
Can it simply sit right there and just tear everything up rather than just keep moving?
Sure. If some of the people remember Keith kind of sat offshore of the Tampa area and sat there and kind of just played with it for a while. We've had several storms that have done this. To say that it is going to do this would be wrong. Just to say where we think it's going to go, that's what we're going to have to be able to deal with right now. If it slows down, this also opens up its wide of swing, its possible line of swing. So we want to know, we want it to keep on going. Not that we're wishing bad weather on the South Florida area, but if it slows down, then it could possibly wobble and move, and that could bring it a little further north. So this still has a potential for this area.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Danny. We'll catch you again a little bit later in the newscast. Now, as we told you at the top of the news, thousands of people evacuated South Florida today, heading to safer ground, mostly here in Central Florida. Here's how the turnpike looked tonight. A double string of slow-and-go traffic packed almost taillight to headlight. Earlier today, it was the same, bumper-to-bumper traffic. Now, this is the Florida Turnpike. Long lines at every gas station along the way. One motorist told Eyewitness News tonight the trip from Miami to Orlando took about 8 hours.
Here in Central Florida, tomorrow is supposed to be the first day of school, and for most it will be. But for school children in Brevard and Marion counties, there is no school tomorrow. Public schools in both counties will be closed. Volusia and Seminole County schools will be open. It will be business as usual at the University of Central Florida. So far, no other counties have ordered schools closed, but Osceola County may change its mind in the wee hours of the morning. So be sure and stay tuned to Eyewitness News Daybreak for an update.
Now, suppose you didn't live here, and suppose you were trying to get to your home in South Florida. Well, tonight you might be stuck. A lot of people are, and we'll take you live to the local Greyhound bus station to see why. Next.
Plus, we'll take you live to Orlando International Airport, which is extremely busy tonight because of the shutdown of the airport in Miami. Much more to come in this extended edition of Eyewitness News tonight.
At the Greyhound bus station here in Orlando because they were on buses headed to South Florida.
None of those buses are running, and many will have to go to a shelter or stay at the station. Richard Froelich is live at the station on John Young Parkway with more. Richard.
Marla and Bob, we're here because this is one of the largest and most modern Greyhound stations in the state. This thing just built about a year or so ago. They can feed people here. They can give them shelter in emergency circumstances here. Many of the people who were taking buses hope to make it back to Miami before the storm. Unfortunately, that is not going to happen. Roads have been closed. People got here and suddenly found they had no choice. Well, they could get off the buses in Orlando, but no one was getting on a bus for South Florida.
It's terrible. No money, 3 kids, it's hard.
With most roads leading to South Florida shut down, Greyhound had no choice but to keep about 150 people at their large bus station in Orlando. There, people could be fed, or they were welcome to stay. That was fine for some folks.
I have 4 small children and an elderly mother with me traveling now. We're very inconvenienced. I understand that they are going to try to take us to a shelter. I don't want to leave this Greyhound bus area. I'm going to stay here. I don't need a shower.
There were some problems as to who was promised what as far as Greyhound's concerned. At least a couple of people told us they were promised accommodations if they agreed to stop here in Orlando and not go further south.
They said that if you get on the bus and go to Orlando, someone will meet you and they will provide accommodations for you.
As it turned out, that did not mean a hotel room.
Well, what we're doing is we're giving the people, they're hanging out here. We're giving them some food and food vouchers and stuff like that. And we're going to set up some shuttle buses and take them to the shelters where they can get some better treatment. They'll have cots set up.
Some were willing to tough it out.
Hey, that's scary.
Isn't it? Why?
Yeah, I'm scared of a hurricane.
How old are you?
12.
Others know the inconvenience could be a lot worse.
But the most important thing is everybody just want to go home to their homes, if there's a home.
And that's a question some of them will only get an answer to in a couple of days. In the meantime, Greyhound has promised refunds for those folks who are here and who are stranded. And Greyhound, in fact, has sent a number of them out to local shelters on their own buses, and presumably will pick them up and bring them back here when the time comes. But Greyhound has also put 1 or 2 of them up in hotels. But hotel space around here is at a premium. And, Greyhound had no influence on that, so they are trying to get some of them to shelters. In the meantime, the people here may turn out to be the lucky ones if, in fact, the storm ends up more through Miami than it does through this area. And our thoughts are with them and with their relations down in the south part of the state. And, of course, there are a lot of people stranded here. They're also stranded at the airport where some of the overflow came from airplanes, and Joan Connolly is standing by there. Joan?
That's right, Richard. People are staying here because all the hotels and motels are booked up for miles around. Now, right now, it is fairly quiet here, but officials are saying no matter what happens, they're convinced that they can handle it. It's a good bet this jet won't make it back home tonight, and neither will many of these people. They're stuck here, stranded until further notice. The earliest flight this couple could get back to California doesn't leave until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So what are you going to do all night tonight?
I want to go to sleep so I can forget about this night.
Airport officials say they really don't know how many people they'll be accommodating tonight. However, they say no matter how many stay here, they'll be ready for them. The airport has enacted its emergency plan, which means the employees will be working extra hard to keep the airport clean. Restaurants will be staying open later, and all airport personnel will be working to keep the frustrated flyers content.
It's not great thinking you're going to spend the night in the airport,
Everything so far has gone smoothly, just the way airport planners wanted it, even though it's not the way most passengers prefer it.
So it hasn't been that much fun, but I don't mind. It's better than getting swamped by the water.
Now, the stranded passengers had their choice of going to a Red Cross shelter if they chose so. However, most of them chose to stay here tonight. Back to you.
Well, Joan, as far as aircraft go, we know that many private pilots from South Florida and along the coast are bringing their aircraft here to be tied down in Orlando. But what about the larger aircraft?
Well, we understand, Marla, that there are a few of them over on the west side of the airport. However, airport officials say at this time they can't tell us exactly how many, but they do say that there aren't many. Back to you.
Anyway, it's one of the nicer airports to be stranded in. Be fun to have the Game Boy concession out there tonight.
Absolutely, that's right, Bob.
All right, thanks, Joan.
Well, a number of schools are serving as evacuation shelters tonight. Here is just a list of some of them. In Osceola County, St. Cloud High and Gateway High are being used as Red Cross shelters. 2 more have opened up. They are Den John Middle School and Mill Creek Elementary. There are 5 schools in Orange County where people can seek shelter. They are Colonial High, Edgewater High, University High, Dr. Phillips, and Winter Park High. In Seminole County, Oviedo and Lyman High are being utilized. In Lake County, Leesburg High School has been opened as a shelter.
Now, before we move on, here's a quick look at the bottom line. At this hour, Hurricane Andrew's winds are howling at 135 miles per hour. That's less than the 150 we told you about earlier. It's expected to hit the Florida coast tomorrow morning around 8 a.m. now between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Here in Central Florida, we may get 3 inches of rain or more, possible tornadoes, and sustained winds of about 40 miles per hour.
Hurricane Andrew is bearing down on the southeast Florida coast with landfall expected around 8 a.m.
Now let's get an update from the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Our Steve Jervey is down there and he joins us live. Hi, Steve. Are you getting worried yet?
Well, it's actually just walked over here. It's not too bad outside. It's actually a very pleasant night, but it's kind of deceiving, isn't it, Dr. Bob Sheets?
Well, it is going to be anyway, as we see the bands of this hurricane coming close to the coast. In about 3 more hours, we're going to see sustained winds here, probably 40 to 50 miles per hour, getting up to hurricane force.
In about probably around daybreak or so, we'll see those hurricane winds?
Well, hurricane winds will probably come before that. We'll sustain 40 to 50 miles per hour at about 2 a.m., so about 3 hours from now, and then continue to increase as the center of that hurricane approaches the Miami area.
Okay, let's take a closer look, and you can see that the eye seems to have changed shape a little bit. In fact, it has lost a little bit of its intensity.
That's right. The eye sort of filled in there a little bit. The reconnaissance aircraft has indicated the pressure has come up, and that means the wind speeds have decreased. So somewhere around 135 mile per hour winds as compared to what we had 150 a few hours ago.
So that's some good news.
That's the good news.
Okay, for our viewers north of Vero Beach, all the way up the coast of Brevard, Volusia counties, again, they can see the cloud band around there. But what kind of weather can they expect tonight and tomorrow morning?
Well, this is the band that came through there a little bit earlier, some of the squalls that actually occurred there. As far as the core of this hurricane and the biggest part of it, you see some of these rain bands that are coming across. Some of those will be kicked out from the hurricane and they just migrate out away from the storm like this one did and perhaps move into your viewing area.
Okay, here in South Florida, this is one of the most intense hurricanes probably in the past 47 years that they're saying right now. Would you agree with that, even though it's lost a little bit of its intensity?
Yes, so you have to go back into the 40s to find hurricanes that were of similar strength.
What's going to happen to this storm once it passes over Florida?
It's going to go right across this area, maybe across this building, as a matter of fact, with the eye of the hurricane, and then into the Gulf of Mexico, and then probably strengthen a little bit more as it gets out there, weaken a little bit as it goes across the peninsula, strengthen a little bit more there, and become a threat to the North Gulf Coast.
What do you think the worst part of this storm is going to be? Storm surge, rainfall, tornado damage?
In terms of the Miami area,
South Florida, right?
Yeah, right here in the Key Biscayne area, Biscayne Bay area, the storm surge right along Miami Beach, the wave action there, and then the winds when you talk about into the highly populated area here in Dade County and Broward County.
Okay, Bob, I hope you get a chance to get some sleep. He's been doing this for about well over 12 hours, sitting at this TV set, mostly briefing TV stations, radio stations here in South Florida. I hope you stay awake.
I hope so.
He's becoming a zombie, but he'll hang in there. Okay, so we'll wait and see what happens with the weather here. It should be a very interesting next 6 or 8 hours here in South Florida. The worst of it looks like it'll arrive just after daybreak. Bob and Marla, back to you.
Well, Steve, knowing that hurricanes run counterclockwise, we've heard that winds on one side are stronger than on the other when there's a very, very well-defined eye of the storm. How does that work with the barometric pressure? Which side is the stronger?
Well, usually the north side, as the winds are coming around from the northeast, is the stronger, but any of the winds inside and around the eye are the most intense winds inside a hurricane. So really everywhere in South Florida around the Miami area has to look out, not only with the winds, but of course the storm surge, that wall of water that comes along with the hurricane and will flood a lot of the coastal areas and a lot of the barrier islands.
All right. Thanks a lot, Steve, and we'll see you a little bit later. Have a good night down there. Okay. Good luck.
And Danny Trainer will be along with the AccuWeather forecast for our area in just a moment.
Stay with us for much more in this expanded edition of Eyewitness News tonight.
That's
who's
name.
next.
Saw my name there.
Yeah.
Let me also just do a blatant plug here, is that we put together a special on hurricanes in anticipation of August and September being the active months. Mike Smith, our producer, put together and traveled all over this country and gathered information about Camille, Hugo, Donna, and we put it all together, and that special will air tonight at midnight. If you are going to go to bed in preparation for school tomorrow or something like that, please roll your VCR, your videotape recorders, and tape this, because we might need it someday in the future.
Especially if you've never been through a hurricane before. It's well worth watching.
Exactly. I understand we have something about schools in Polk County, right?
Polk County schools are closed tomorrow.
Okay.
That's added to our list.
Right. Now, we did have something new issued to us that became effective at 11 o'clock. We knew this was coming. It's one of those things we say, okay, while the storm is passing over South Florida, let's be aware that tornadoes are spawned out of the storm. Let's tell the folks in Central and South Central Florida that they are subject to the possibility of tornadoes. So, Indian River County, Brevard County, Osceola, Polk, and all counties south of those areas are under a tornado watch until 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll have a picture for you here in just a moment, show you what all areas are included. Not to mention, there is also a tropical storm warning over all of the East Coast. It stops right about the north part of Merritt Island and continues all the way down to Vero Beach. There, it becomes a hurricane warning because of the storm. We have the latest coordinates in case you've missed them the many times they've been on the air. We have them for you. Let's begin first, though, with a look at the storm as it pushes toward the state of Florida. It is still continuing toward the west at 16 miles an hour. As Dr. Sheets reported just a moment ago, it has lost some intensity. It's lost some minor intensity. It's still 135 mile an hour winds right near the center. Some of the things you might be interested in, too, is that the eye here got a little bit bigger. It was like 8 miles across. Now it's 15 miles across. So that shows that it's lost a little bit of its intensity. The wider the eye, the less intense the storm. However, it's still a very strong hurricane. It is considered a Category 4 hurricane. If you are tracking it, here it is. The latest coordinates as of 11 o'clock tonight. Located at 25.4 north, 78.1 west. Highest winds are now 135 miles an hour, moving towards the west at 16 miles an hour. And it's 135 miles east of Miami. Projecting out the possible path of this hurricane as it continues along this track. If it does not vary, it should be passing right between Miami and Homestead tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Then continue across the state, get back out into the Gulf of Mexico, where it could re-intensify and then possibly be a threat to the Louisiana coast. That's very hypothetical at this particular point. There are some other things going on in Central Florida. I want to show you some of our maps that we've put together. There is a tropical storm warning, meaning winds of 39 to 74 miles an hour are possible from Merritt Island all the way down to Vero Beach. That also means into the interior part of the state, where we could experience 40-mile-an-hour winds with some gusts even higher. Now, there's also going to be some rainfall with this. Rainfall could be up to 3 inches of rain right here in Central Florida. You move slightly south, that starts picking up from 3 to 6 inches of rain all the way down to Lake Okeechobee. In addition, there's going to be some tidal problems. Seas will be running 2 to 4 feet above normal all the way from Merritt Island down to about Vero Beach, and from Vero Beach all the way down to about West Palm, it'll be 4 to 8 feet. I want to show you what the area of the tornado watch is. Here you can see it in red, stretching all the way from Brevard County into Osceola, Polk County, and then continuing throughout all of Central Florida. You want to watch some of the bands of the rains as they're trying to get closer to the state of Florida? Watch. This is Andrew. Watch how Andrew gets tighter and tighter and closer and closer and closer. You just saw Dr. Sheets show you a close-up view of the Miami radar. This is what they're seeing. This is how close it is. There's the eye of the storm, and there is the reach of the storm and how far out it reaches. Definitely, West Palm Beach is going to be affected by the storm. We are going to have a crummy day tomorrow. It is going to rain. It is going to be windy, and things are going to start improving by tomorrow afternoon. The sun will come out, and it'll be muggy. If you go out right now, it's pretty muggy. There is Andrew right now. There is where Andrew will be by 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. Here are some temperatures around the state of Florida, ranging from 78 in Ocala to 80 in Vero Beach to 79 in Lakeland, 82 in Daytona Beach. Here's the forecast. Windy with showers So bundle up, get that umbrella, get those galoshes, get that rain slicker out for tomorrow. The high will be 90 degrees. Yeah, that means the sun will pop out sometime late tomorrow afternoon. It'll become a large sauna. It will be rain chance of 80% here in Central Florida. And the 5-day forecast tomorrow is a crummy day, and then things go back to being normal. And remember, August and September are the active months. We still have another month and a half to go, and the season lasts until the end of November.
We've started it off with a bang, that's for sure.
Yeah, we picked the first letter in the alphabet and ran with it.
Man.
Thanks, Danny.
Okay. Well, winds are reportedly picking up tonight along the Vero Beach coastline, and people there are being told to take special care tonight. We'll have a live report from that area in just a moment.
And shelters are filling up tonight all over Central Florida. We'll tell you how quickly sleeping spaces are disappearing when this special expanded edition of Eyewitness News returns.
Continue our extended coverage now of Hurricane Andrew. The northern edge of the hurricane warning is in Vero Beach in Indian River County.
Just north of that, in Brevard County is under a tropical storm warning. Vanessa Eccles is in Vero Beach tonight and joins us now through a live telephone hookup. Vanessa, what's the situation in Indian River County now?
Well, right now, Marla, the wind has really been picking up here within the last hour or so. So far, no rain, though, in the spot where we are. Our specific location is an area called Orchid Island, right on the ocean. Now, traveling all through Indian River County today, it appears that people here are relatively calm about Hurricane Andrew. Most people are saying that they are as ready as they can be. That's about all they can do. We have seen them boarding and taping up their windows in their homes and their businesses. Oddly enough, a lot of people came out to the boardwalk this afternoon saying they wanted one last look at the ocean before the storm. There was an announcement from Indian River County's Emergency Management Office about an hour ago. Officials say at this point they have no plans for evacuations, but as you know, that could change quickly depending on what the hurricane does. Also, no shelters are opened in the county tonight, but Emergency Management does say that county schools here are canceled for tomorrow. We are going to keep track on the situation here tonight and keep you posted on any more developments. But for now, back to you.
Vanessa, we had some other conversations going on here in the studio, and I may have missed what you were saying about evacuations. Folks in Vero Beach have not been ordered to evacuate. Is that what you said, even though they are still under the hurricane warning?
Right. Not at this point. Emergency Management says there are no plans for evacuations. That's just at this point. They keep saying to keep track, keep up to date on what things are developing here, because that could change very quickly, and you would have to really get out of this area fast. So just kind of keep watch on what's going on.
Yeah, it's getting pretty late to start evacuating now.
Roads are already clogged. Well, thank you. Thank you, Vanessa.
Was once again Vanessa Eccles, live from Vero Beach on the telephone. Emergency shelters here in Central Florida are open tonight to host the influx of people forced out of their homes in South Florida.
The Red Cross says there's no way to tell how many people need a place to stay, but shelters are getting crowded. Anita Smith joins us live from one shelter right now. Anita, where are you?
Well, we are at Gateway High School, which is the first school off the Florida Turnpike at the St. Cloud exit. This place, this cafeteria, is maxed out. People who are coming here are being sent to 3 other schools in Osceola County. We're told that Dr. Phillips High School in Orange County is also filling up just as quickly. Now, these shelter conditions are not ideal, but it is safe.
Again, another room to my left out these doors that is completely empty. If you choose to move in that room, you're welcome to.
There's still room at the inn, but it's filling fast. The registration table is steadily crowded with evacuees signing up for the Red Cross shelter and setting up camp to wait out Hurricane Andrew. Here, at least there's less worry.
A little bit, but I'm happy because we are here.
That's your main concern, your safety?
Yes, yes.
The Silvas are up from Miami Beach. It took them 6 hours for the normal 4-hour drive. This cafeteria started filling up about 8. Shelters are all that's left because area hotel rooms are full. Not all of the stranded are Floridians. A good number here are tourists. This family with a horror story of making a hotel reservation only to have it snatched away.
And I came in the hotel after a trip of 8 hours, and he told me there's no reservation, I don't know you, and there's no room. So that's why I'm very happy to be here.
Now, a lot of people say they are very happy to be here, knowing that in just about 7 hours or so, their homes could very well be destroyed, and in a couple of days, they may go back home to rubble. Now, Osceola County officials in schools are having to do some fancy footwork around here. Right now, they are planning to open schools tomorrow morning. Here at Gateway, they're planning on canceling the breakfast program, and they're going to have to do some shifting around to get students their lunch, perhaps serve that lunch in the classrooms. Right now, those shelters around Central Florida area are filling up. There are 12 of them, and the Red Cross says they can take as many people as need a roof over their heads. Bob, Marla.
Anita, you say Gateway is maxed out. What is the maximum there again?
Right now, they're looking at about 250 people here at Gateway. Not quite sure about the shelters in the other areas, but if they cannot accommodate you at one shelter, they will send you to another shelter.
Hopefully with some directions as well.
Yes, certainly.
All right, thanks a lot, Anita.
Well, folks in the Bahamas have already felt the fury of Hurricane Andrew. We'll talk by telephone to a resident there in just a moment.
Plus, if you're looking for up-to-date information on the hurricane, it's right at your fingertips. Just call 1-800-732-WFTV. That's our hurricane hotline. We'll be right back. Full force of Hurricane Andrew won't hit South Florida till early morning, but folks living in the Bahamas are already going through it.
Earlier tonight, I telephoned some relatives living in Nassau. They say their only Bahamian television station had to be evacuated this afternoon and was forced off the air at 4 o'clock, leaving them on their own without TV news reports. So far, they are having to guess as to what's happening around them.
Highest winds we've had through the early evening and night were 95 to 100 miles an hour. There was quite a bit of damage done, so we understand, in the Eleuthera area. They didn't give us any detailed information on that, just that there have been some electric wires down, trees blown down, roofs off of houses, that type of thing. And we've heard nothing of any casualties. I think our highest winds here in New Providence were, I would say, 70, 75 miles an hour. We're not sure whether this is like just the eye, which didn't come directly over us, but is close enough to us that maybe we're thinking this is like a little lull, you know, which you do usually have when the eye of a storm is sort of going by. We're not sure whether that's what we're having or whether this is the worst of it. And we're just not sure of that yet.
Okay. Stay safe and warm.
We'll try.
Okay.
There are hundreds of islands in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We've heard unconfirmed reports that water is waist deep on some islands and that many houses and some small villages may be completely wiped out. There are also 4 people reportedly dead. Bob?
Now, Hurricane Andrew will have an effect on school children here in Central Florida tomorrow. 3 counties have now decided to close their public schools: Marion, Brevard, and Polk counties. Most other counties will keep their schools open, but some might change their minds, like Osceola County, early in the morning. So tune in Eyewitness News Daybreak to find out for sure. Osceola will decide sometime in the wee hours of the morning.
And here's a quick update now on Hurricane Andrew, what we call the bottom line. The hurricane's winds are now blowing at 135 miles an hour, and expected landfall is tomorrow morning around 8 a.m.
Here in Central Florida, we can expect about 3 inches of rain or more, some possible tornadoes, and sustained winds of about 40 miles per hour.
And in just a moment, we'll take you live to South Florida again for another update on the approaching hurricane.
But first, here's a reminder to call our hurricane hotline if you need some up-to-date information between newscasts. Call 1-800-732-WFTV. Bracing for tomorrow morning's expected arrival of Hurricane Andrew, lots of people have evacuated, and the ones who stayed are battening down the hatches.
Let's go back to South Florida now. Ross Cavett joins us live from Pompano Beach. Ross, what's the situation look like?
Well, it's a good night to fly a kite right about now. A little gusty wind, a little sprinkle here, but nothing out of the ordinary, I'm told, for the beach side here. We can give you the requisite palm tree and the light shot if we could. Show you, yeah, it is blowing a little bit out here. We see some lightning. In fact, we got a squall line, we're told, entering the coast right now. Just one of many that will hit before Andrew starts to affect us here. We're told the winds will really pick up around 2 in the morning, then between 5 and 8 a.m. Really hold on to your socks. It's going to be a big one here in this part of northern Broward County. Most people have evacuated, but a couple are just kind of hanging out here. We're right next to the beach, by the way. There's some surfers out there. A couple of guys from a local area here. What brings you out during an evacuation order, for Pete's sake?
Well, we came out here to do a little filming with our camera, and our battery just died. So I guess we're just going to stay to see a little bit and leave.
What do you want to see?
I just want to see how high the winds get up. And well, if it starts raining, I'm going to leave. We're going to take off. We're not going to hang down here. But I never seen anything like this before.
You guys saw some surfers out there. What do you think about that?
Crazy.
It's sick.
Crazy.
Definitely sick.
You could surf on other days. Better than this.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's definitely blowing out here, starting to pick up, and we're getting a squall line moving in. It's raining just a little bit here, and there are some people lounging around down here by the beach, hoping to see what the Hurricane Andrew brings. But I tell you, the majority of downtown Boynton Beach and the area where we're in now, Pompano Beach, has been completely deserted, which I was quite frankly surprised to see. I thought there'd be a lot more people hanging around trying to ride the storm out in their homes, condos, or whatever. But this is really a ghost town. In fact, we plan on leaving as the winds start picking up a little bit later on this morning. Right now, let's go back to you in the studios.
So where do you plan to spend the night? You're not sticking around in that town, I guess, huh?
Actually, we will. We'll just go inland a little bit into a shelter area, hopefully. Either a shelter for the police that they're staying at the fire stations, or a shelter where a lot of the folks that do live on the coastal areas have moved inland to. Hopefully it's safe. It'll probably be safe for us. Whether our equipment survives, I'm not so sure.
Oh, well, let's hope it all rides through the storm just fine.
All right, Ross, take care.
All right.
Well, we've heard from several businesses around Central Florida who want to get a message to their workers. Patrick Air Force Base says non-essential personnel need not report to work tomorrow morning. Over at the Kennedy Space Center, all workers are asked to come in at their regularly scheduled time. Here in Central Florida, Disney World says it will be business as usual tomorrow.
Still to come tonight, Danny Trainer will pinpoint Andrew for you, and he'll show you his projected path.
What will he do once he clears Florida? We'll ask Danny next. Parts of Central Florida are under a tropical storm warning, other parts under a tornado watch.
Correct.
What do you see on our radar, Danny?
Well, what's interesting about this day, some little odds and ends. I talked to one of the weather watchers tonight who got 5/8 of an inch of rain. First of all, that rain was not created by Andrew. It was just a typical thunderstorm that ran through the area, but it was moved along by Andrew. He said it was like a band of rain coming through, and that's what we can expect tomorrow. Bands of rain, maybe even in between some sunshine. Gusty winds stay around 40 miles an hour. They may stay up to 40 miles an hour, and then gust even higher than that. So it's going to be a rather windy, gusty, damp day. Even walking outside right now, the humidity is just saturated. I mean, it's like walking into a large sponge. The other things I want to show you, we do want to show you the radar because we haven't all day because there hasn't been anything really to show. There was some rain there around 3 o'clock this afternoon, but as you can see, there are no bands of showers except a little bit that looks suspicious just north of Brevard County there. Not really what you would classify as a band. Now look at the lightning indicator. We just heard from one of our reporters that there were some signs of lightning offshore, but as you can see, all we record here, by the way, is cloud-to-ground lightning. So if it's lightning that's happening between the clouds, it's not registering on this system. But as you can see, it is not a big lightning producer as the storm moves forward. Let's take a look at the storm. You can see it closing in on the state of Florida. Again, to emphasize what time they think landfall is going to happen, 8 o'clock in the morning between Miami and Homestead. Now, here is the latest coordinates. There will be an update in this in about 5 minutes, but currently it's 25.4 north, 78.1 west. Winds 135, moving to the west at 16, about 135 miles east of Miami. We haven't looked very much at the state itself and look at the cloud cover over Central Florida. As you can see, we're not under the influence of the banding just yet, but that will come as we continue into the evening. We expect some thunderstorms to start building up tonight, and it'll probably be a rather crummy morning. In addition to that, here is the projected path of movement. The storm will cross across the state. As it runs into trees and buildings and other things, it will run into friction. This will slow it down. It will lose its identity. Once it crosses back over into the open sea, though, into the Gulf of Mexico with its warm waters, it finds the fuel it needs again to possibly re-intensify. So I think the book is wide open again once it crosses the state, but we should start to see some clearing in the weather conditions that prevail here in Central Florida by tomorrow afternoon. In fact, I projected that tomorrow's high will be 90, so you can bet there's some sunshine in that forecast.
Quickly now, we've concentrated so much on Miami. We haven't really talked about the Keys. We've seen hurricanes wash out bridges in the Keys.
The Keys are one of the very first places they told them to evacuate, particularly around Largo. And because the circular force of the storm is going to bring it on the north side. I think the Keys will get a lesser amount, but still in all, when you're on an island, the best thing to do is get off.
You bet. There's going to be lots of flooding and everything else.
Exactly right.
All right. Thanks a lot, Danny. Now, before we go, one last update on schools. Public schools in 3 counties will be closed tomorrow. We are told Brevard County, Marion County, and Polk County are all closing their schools, but the other 5 Central Florida counties say their schools will stay open for the first day of class. However, folks in Osceola County won't make their final decision until the wee hours of the morning. So tune in Eyewitness News Daybreak to find out for sure.
And you can stay informed throughout the night as Eyewitness News brings you hourly updates on Hurricane Andrew.
Then we'll crank up our extended live team coverage of the hurricane once again as it comes ashore in South Florida. Tune in Channel 9 first thing in the morning for Eyewitness News Daybreak.
And if you want an update on the hurricane between newscasts, call our hurricane hotline at 1-800-732-WFTV.
That's our news for now. Thanks for joining us. Stay safe. Try to stay dry.
And stay tuned for Danny's special. Good night.
This is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
And throughout the night, we will have updates on Hurricane Andrew. I'm Brian Christie at the CNN Center.
And I'm Dave Michaels.
And Dave, this is a very relentless storm. It is approaching South Florida as we speak. It is one of those powerful storms to hit the United States in decades, they say. More than 1 million coastal residents told to leave so far.
Okay, Ted Texter, our meteorologist here at CNN, has been keeping an eye on it. Ted, tell us about it right now.
Dave, we have this midnight update of its current position, the position of the eye. And of course, we always focus on the eye. That is the center of the storm. Around the eye is where it is most fierce. And it now is about 110 miles to the east. As you see the progress it has been making towards Miami, Florida, now 110 miles to the east of Miami. The wind speeds, the maximum sustained winds, that's just one good way to gauge how strong the storm is, are now running at 140 miles an hour. Earlier, we reported to you that they were at 150. That was as they were crossing the Bahamas. Lost a little bit of strength throughout the evening hours, down to 145, now estimated at 140. They used the pressure of the center of the storm to estimate those wind speeds, by the way. It is still making its way dead westerly track towards Miami, moving still at 16 miles an hour. That has been very consistent, both the track and the speed throughout the afternoon and evening hours, and that not expected to change much. So that makes landfall of the eye now in the morning, about dawn, around 7, 8 o'clock. And as a terrible coincidence, as a matter of fact, the normal astronomical high tide is at 5:01 in the morning. So the combination of the two bring on the onslaught of water. And water, by far, is one of the biggest problems that we have with hurricanes. Brian, we will bring you more details about this storm in just a few moments.
Thanks a lot, Ted. We're talking about strong winds and heavy rains now approaching the South Florida area. It is apparently, as Ted said, moving 16 miles per hour. John Zarella standing by in Miami. John, I would think that you guys are starting to brace.
Well, they certainly are. We're just now beginning to feel the wind pick up, the gusts picking up. Probably not even to tropical storm force strength yet. You know, it's still a breeze. The trees are blowing, but it is gradually building. You can feel it a little at a time. CNN's Charles Jaco is here with me now, and he has been out and about all night. And see, Charles, that there are people out there who really have nowhere to go in this storm, aren't there?
There are quite a few, John. We saw some of them earlier just a short time ago. Some people living in some really foul conditions down near the Port of Miami. The homeless living in Miami's Bicentennial Park, living in lean-tos, teepees, huts, right next to a shipping canal full of stagnant water, rats, all kinds of things. And these men that we talked to tonight said that they would rather take their chances staying on the street.
It's like, you know, having your only assets of life, and you know, you're just gonna walk away from it. I've been at it 8 years, you know, and I done been through 4 or 5 hurricanes, and they've been tore up this city, and I'm still surviving.
So you're not worried about getting killed?
No, because I'm gonna die one day.
It's just a chance you have to take. And so you're willing to take that chance?
I'm gonna die of something. I don't think it's my time to die now.
We shot that videotape. Miami Mayor Xavier Suarez showed up and convinced these men to leave. He said there would be job programs waiting for them Tuesday. We asked the mayor what his biggest concern was, and he said the concern was getting people like this who had no place to go or who had some place to go but just didn't want to leave into some place of safety. As we were talking, right over your back there, I saw some lightning flashes, the first we've seen in several hours. So obviously the storm that they're worried about is now starting to approach.
Any idea where the mayor had in mind for these people to go? Were they going to be bused somewhere, or just, you know, grab your belongings and...
Well, the police told them they'd be arrested if they didn't leave. Several buses of them were taken off. We understand they were taken to a high school here where there were psychologists ready to counsel them. A lot of these people are probably not the most mentally stable in the world, so they'll be back on the streets very probably as soon as this is over. But you got a large population of homeless that hang out, as you well know, in Bicentennial, excuse me, laryngitis is kicking in, Bicentennial Park downtown, and it's empty of homeless right now. I think it's pretty safe to say that as soon as the storm passes, they'll be right back.
I find it interesting anytime we cover a hurricane. It seems that people here in Miami, despite the fact that it has been a quarter century since a major hurricane hit this area. It was 1965 Hurricane Betsy, 79 Hurricane David, came right up to the coast, literally stopped at Miami's front door and turned north. A long time, but people generally seem to have responded well and gone about. Fortunately, we had a whole day today to do it.
There have been a few foul-ups. For example, we understood that there were some Dade County school buses that never showed up, stranding some people in some nursing homes and other facilities. That may have been taken care of. But generally, the evacuation has gone relatively well. We have been led to understand, though, that some of the shelters, the ones we've been to, are at capacity, but that others are not. CNN's Bonnie Anderson and others talked to some people over near the beach who are just refusing to leave. And having been through a major hurricane myself, Hurricane Hugo in the Caribbean, I was really shocked because you know and I know what one of these storm surges can do, and you know, that's the main worry for a lot of these people.
Right, and that's the area that's been evacuated, anything east of US 1. And just very quickly to tell you that US 1 is right here behind us. We have moved our location. Our bureau is right here in a 10-story glass-enclosed building. And Biscayne Boulevard right here is the evacuation line. We're on the other side of the evacuation line. Not that that makes a whole heck of a lot of difference.
By several feet.
By several feet in a storm with 140-mile-an-hour winds. Back to you in Atlanta, Brian.
John and Charles, one quick question. Let's talk about electricity here. What does a city government like Miami, county government, what do they do to prepare for a storm like this as far as electricity is concerned? Because I would think this would be very dangerous at this point.
Well, basically, when the winds reach a certain speed limit, the power companies cut the power so that when the lines go down, you don't have people stepping on hot wires. At least that's the theory and principle and how it's supposed to work.
One of the things you see in a major hurricane is a light show of transformers exploding. We heard an interview with a spokesman for Florida Power and Light, which handles the power for this part of Florida. And they said, well, in Hurricane Hugo around Charleston, it was about 17 days before they got the power fully restored. And he said, sounds about right, depending on the size of the damage, anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to maybe 3 weeks. And I think that's one thing a lot of people around here who haven't been through a hurricane aren't prepared for. Mm-hmm. The storm and the wind and the rain and the water are terrifying, but the aftermath is like an agonizing toothache. Days and weeks without power, without running water, with streets being blocked.
I can tell you that during Hugo, while Charles was over in the islands in Puerto Rico and in that area, I was just a little bit north of Charleston, and what you're talking about was just an unbelievable sight to be looking in the distance, pitch black like it is now, and just watching transformers exploding one after the other after the other. Well, we're right here. There are some transformers around us. We'll stay with you as long as we can throughout the night from here. And now back to you, Brian, in Atlanta.
Okay, John Zarella and Charles Jaco standing by live in what is about to become a very serious place, the Miami shoreline. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to Dave Michaels for more. Dave?
Thank you, Brian. Florida Governor Lawton Chiles predicts evacuees from the threat of Hurricane Andrew will amount to 1 million people from 6 counties. Thousands are pouring into the 150 shelters operated by the Red Cross in southern Florida. 200 disaster specialists from 19 Red Cross chapters are providing assistance. Many of the evacuees were ordered to get out. Their homes are in low-lying coastal areas, including the Florida Keys. Now, they're making the best of it somewhere else.
Thought of a 150-mile-an-hour wind blowing through my house kind of scared me.
How about your boy? He doesn't know anything about this?
No. I don't think he really understands too much about it.
I'm gonna make a little pallet on the floor if I find somewhere, because it's real packed.
And try to sleep?
Yeah.
Are you gonna be able to sleep?
I don't know. With all this noise, I don't know.
Some southern Florida residents went north to the Orlando area. Walt Disney World officials say they expect a lot of visitors tomorrow. Brian.
Thank you very much. Billy Knight is standing by on the phone. He's in the Florida Keys right now. Billy, I guess you all are keeping a very close eye on the television sets. Radios are turned up very loudly and staying close by the phone at this point.
Yes, Brian, we are. We're watching the Miami television stations, and we're broadcasting live here from WCTH Radio in Isla Mirada at mile marker 82. We're 42 miles from the mainland, and we were very, very glad that the county officials down here, all of the authorities, did such a great job of evacuating the Keys. And I've been in touch with them, and they figure that they have at least half of all the residents of the Keys out. The rest of them are all boarded up in their houses. They're very quiet. No one's on the street. There's absolutely no traffic. It looks like a ghost town here.
What precautions have you taken in that area to brace for the storm?
Well, ourselves here at the radio station, WCTH, and all of the government officials, we've got in a stock of plenty of drinking water. We've got enough food to last us for a couple of days, battery-operated radios, flashlights, and all of the normal things you find with emergency situations like this. But we're sitting here hoping that we can stay on the air with the people to keep them informed of where the bad spots are. We're very vulnerable here, being 42 miles out in the water on a little tiny island. It leaves you kind of nervous. I'm about 200 to 250 yards from the shore myself, on the third story, the top story of the building here, looking out across the ocean to the east, where President Bush lands the helicopter when he comes down here to go backcountry fishing.
Okay, Billy Knight from WCTH from the Florida Keys. Dave?
CNN's coverage of Hurricane Andrew and its threat to southern Florida will continue. We're back with our continuing coverage of Hurricane Andrew, which is just off the southern Florida coast. Gary Tuckman, CNN's Gary Tuckman, is in Boca Raton. You have a heavy windstorm there. What's going on, Gary?
Well, that's right, Brian and Dave. Boca Raton is about 40 or 50 miles north of where the center of the hurricane is supposed to hit. But that doesn't mean emergency officials here are less worried. As a matter of fact, many of them are more worried. That's because a lot of people here are not evacuating. It's a big problem. When people in Boca Raton and the major city of the Northwest Palm Beach heard that the hurricane was going to hit near Miami, a lot of people decided to stay on the barrier islands and the beaches. They decided maybe it would not be that bad. But emergency officials are warning people to get away from the coastline. They're saying that the gales here will be hurricane force later this morning. Right now, the winds are gusting about 50 miles per hour here in Boca Raton. Now, it's a problem that afflicts all South Floridians. Every year, local newspapers and local TV newscasts, when hurricane season starts around June 1st, have reports talking about how to survive a hurricane. Well, everybody here reads them, but a lot of people take it with a grain of salt because South Florida has been blessed over the years. For the last several decades, they have not been hit with a major hurricane. So while Texas and Louisiana and the Carolinas get hit occasionally, a lot of people in South Florida, and a lot of those people who have come from the north, believe, well, we're not going to get hit by a hurricane. Well, it looks like their luck's run out. It looks like that hurricane will come tomorrow, and right now a lot of people here in South Florida are not going to have an easy night's sleep. This is Gary Tuckman, CNN Live in Boca Raton, Florida.
Gary, this is Dave in Atlanta. There are a lot of very expensive real estate along that strip in Boca Raton. Are a lot of people just simply afraid to leave their homes because of that?
Dave, because of the wind, it's hard to hear your question, but I think you asked me, are a lot of people going to be leaving their homes? Right now, police are trying to get a lot of the people along the coastline to leave their homes. No one is being allowed over the bridges next to the beach. Right now, we're standing next to the beach where the winds are gusting, and they are still trying to get people over the bridges, away from these coastal islands, away from these beaches. They are telling the people along the coast that this could be very dangerous to their life.
So the evacuation is not mandatory for those people then?
Dave, I'm sorry. Once again, I'm having trouble hearing you. But the evacuation is going.
Is it
going fairly well, but unfortunately, it's not going as well as a lot of the police here would have wanted.
All right, Gary Tuckman reporting to us live from a very windy Boca Raton. Brian.
Okay, Dave, we're going to go over to the Bahamas now. The cruise line Sea Escape earlier sailed its 1,200 capacity Scandinavian Dawn from Fort Lauderdale to Freeport to pick up passengers, and evidently the boat was completely booked, completely filled. They took as many passengers as they could to get off of the Bahamas. Tourists who stayed behind were instructed to leave all their belongings in the bathroom. We go to Debbie Bartlett now in the Bahamas by telephone. Debbie, explain what's going on right there now.
Well, I'm in Eleuthera right now, and the hurricane has passed. The sad reality, though, is that Hurricane Andrew has claimed at least one life. Telford Neely of the Bluff Eleuthera is the first confirmed tragedy. The island of Eleuthera, particularly in the central and northern parts, was severely affected by the full-force hurricane that lingered on this island for more than 3 hours. In Ocean View, a settlement 3 miles north of Governor's Harbor, that settlement was severely hit. 12 homes were demolished. Roofs were blown off, walls caved in, and appliances, furniture, and personal effects were left exposed to the venom of the high winds. Some of the homes are owned by winter residents, the others by natives. Up until now, we have not been able to contact several settlements in central Eleuthera, James Siston, Hatchet Bay, and Gregory Town because of flooded roads and fallen casuarina and pine trees. Electricity is out. No electricity on the entire island of Eleuthera. There are no telephone lines. They're all down. The newly elected Prime Minister, the Honorable Hubert Ingram, is expected to travel here to Eleuthera later on today to assess the damages wrought by Hurricane Andrew.
Okay, Debbie Bartlett in the Bahamas, thank you very much for joining us by the telephone. Dave?
We're going now to Yvette Stewart, also in the Bahamas. Yvette, tell us exactly where you are and what you have experienced so far.
Well, I'm here in New Providence, the capital of the Bahamas, and apparently the worst is over for this island. Hurricane Andrew did not hit here as hard as it did in Eleuthera. It's estimated that winds got up to about 60 to 80 miles per hour here in New Providence. There are reports of fallen trees making some roads impassable, a lot of debris on the streets, and a number of electrical fires. But there have been no reports of injury here in New Providence. The hurricane is now headed directly for another area of the Bahamas, the island of Bimini, known by many as the game fishing capital of the world or gateway to the Bahamas. Officials at the Meteorological Department are warning that because of the fact that Bimini is a low-lying area, the winds can have a devastating effect on Bimini. Hurricane Andrew is expected to hit Bimini at about 2 a.m.
Ms. Stewart, how are the warnings for you people on those islands?
I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
How were the warnings? Did you get enough warning?
We were getting hurricane warnings from yesterday, or as a matter of fact, this is already Monday. From about Saturday, we were getting warnings.
Very good. Yvette Stewart in New Providence in the Bahamas. Thank you very much. Brian.
This powerful storm is very, very close to Miami at this hour. As we mentioned earlier, our reporters down there are telling us that the winds are starting to pick up, the rain is starting to come along. Let's go right now to Ted Texter to update us. Ted?
Brian, we have a composite of radar returns over the past few hours, and you can see the storm in the eye of the storm, very evident in the radar scopes now, as it's making its way across the Bahamas. We've had reports, of course, of a lot of destruction there, possibly now one death or one confirmed death. The northern part of the chain receiving the brunt of this storm. And keep in mind, please keep in mind, especially if you're perhaps in Palm Beach, Boca Raton, the storm's main strength is to the north. And now with this storm from the eye's center extending northward about 30 to 35 miles, there are still hurricane strength winds, and then another 70 miles. The tropical storm strength winds, or near 70 miles an hour, continue. Let me show you the progress the storm is making now. We have its center now at 110 miles just to the east of Miami, Florida. It is still making its way to the west. It's 16 miles an hour, still with 140 miles an hour. Those are the maximum sustained winds. Earlier on, just before and as it was making its way across the Bahamas, the storm was up to a strength of 150 miles an hour. That's almost Category 5. It remains at its Category 4 strength. It will likely do that, perhaps some intensification as it continues to move further to the west. David, Brian?
Well, this is a very, very dangerous storm, and we are going to be here throughout the night to update you, to give you more information. So those of you in the Florida area especially, you may want to pay close attention.
Absolutely. When our coverage continues here at CNN, we will be talking to people and get reports from the Florida Keys. Hello once again, I'm Dave Michaels. A major hurricane, Hurricane Andrew, is just sitting off the southern Florida coastal area, about 110 miles off the coast, and we are continuing our coverage here at CNN.
And I'm Brian Christie. You know, Dave, one of the most precarious areas we're talking about here is the Florida Keys. Standing by right now, Emil Lavash from the Florida Keys. He's the Emergency Management Officer at Marathon of the Keys. Can you explain exactly what's going on right now, Mr. Lavash?
Yeah, Brian. Right now, we're sort of quiet. Winds throughout the Keys are 10 to 20 miles an hour. The roads are virtually traffic-free, and it's quiet, dry, high humidity, naturally. A substantial number of people have left the Keys, and those that are left in the Keys are either buttoned up tightly in their residences or are at one of the numerous refuges we have located throughout the Keys, and there's still vacancies in all the refuges throughout the Keys.
Mr. Lavash, do you have electricity, and is power still on at this point?
Oh, yes. We still have electricity and power in the Keys.
How about gas? I guess many of the gas stations were reported earlier were being shut down.
Well, I'm not sure, but I suspect there might be a few still left open.
And how close are you to the water?
Right now, I'd say maybe 30 or 40 yards from the water.
And what did you do to prepare for the storm, as far as bottled water concerned, food, essentials?
Well, we've instructed people to keep a supply of bottled water and food and a flashlight and things of that nature. And of course, those that are going to the refuges, and we expect still a few more to enter there, while we encourage certain things such as water and food and flashlights, we certainly prohibit alcohol and firearms and,
Mr. Lavash,
unfortunately, pets.
Well, thank you very much for your time, sir. And the Florida Keys, brace yourself. I believe it's on its way. Let's go to Dave Michaels.
Thank you, Brian. Needless to say, CNN's coverage of Hurricane Andrew will continue throughout the night, and we'll be back with more after this. CNN meteorologist Ted Texter is standing by to give us an update on Andrew, the hurricane.
Dave, the position of the storm now, the center of the storm, 110 miles to the east of Miami, Florida, still moving to the west at a pretty good clip, really a very strong, fast-moving storm. It's 16 miles an hour to the west. It's headed dead on for Miami, Florida. Maximum sustained winds now at 140 miles an hour. It has lost a little bit of strength. It could very possibly gain some more because it has yet quite a lot of warm water to cross before it makes it into the mainland, into the peninsula of Miami, Florida, in that specific area. We'll be watching it with you, of course, throughout the evening time. It looks like the storm is not going to lose much more strength before it makes landfall by 5 to 7 o'clock in the morning. Dave, Brian?
Good. Thank you, Ted.
One of the most populated areas, we might point out, in Florida is the area where the storm is just about to come ashore. I mean, it's really serious. We're going to take a break here, and we'll be back.
This is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hurricane Andrew is bearing down on Miami Beach and the city of Miami. It's only about 110 miles or so off the coast. I'm Dave Michael. CNN's coverage continues.
And I'm Brian Christie. And one of the things that we are concerned about is the fact that the punch of the storm is quite substantial. The eye of the storm is very important, too. It is about 8 miles wide. And Ted, maybe you can explain a little bit more about the eye.
Well, Brian, it's the best way to track the storm because it's the center of the storm. The storm radials out, of course, and these are bands of rain, very heavy rain showers, as a matter of fact. That moving now across the Bahamas, now towards the southeast coast of Florida, as you mentioned. With the storm wrapping around very tightly, the eye on this particular storm is about 8 miles wide. It's kind of a tight eye, and if you've ever watched a skater, as they pull their arms in closely and pull that momentum together, they spin more quickly. That's the case with tornadoes, or with hurricanes as well. We go now to the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida, which is in direct path of the storm. And Dr. Bob Sheets, the director of the center, joins us. Dr. Sheets, do you sense any intensification of the storm? What do you think will happen tonight?
Well, Ted, in fact, the small eye you were talking about with 8 miles, that's sort of expanded now. That inner one sort of dissipated and the outer one has taken over. And that means that the storm has decreased a little bit in strength. And that's the good news. You see it here on our radar. So it's about 20 miles around there now. And that means the winds, instead of being 150 miles per hour, are closer to maybe 130 or so at this time. We do have some stronger winds up here to the north side of the center of the storm. Right now, the big problem is that the bands are now reaching our coast, and so that full force of the hurricane will be moving across South Florida over the next 12 hours.
Dr. Sheets, as the storm makes its way across the Gulf Stream, do you sense any changes there because of that?
Well, that's going to maintain its strength there fairly well. The pressure has come up again in the reconnaissance aircraft. The latest one in there had about 941 millibars, I think. It still had 140-some knot winds of flight level there north of the center. But the pressure had come up, and of course, moving over the Gulf Stream itself means that it's not going to weaken much more.
Dr. Sheets, I'm sure that our viewers would be interested in knowing how that pressure reading is obtained. How does the aircraft get that pressure reading?
Well, they have drop-sons. They actually drop these instruments in the eye of the storm, and they go down to the surface and measure the pressure as it falls. And, of course, as it splashes into the ocean, that's where we get the minimum pressure.
Dr. Sheets, thank you so very much for joining us, and good luck there as the storm moves on shore. We'll be back with you, I'm sure, throughout the nighttime. And now here's Dave Michaels at the news desk.
Thank you, Ted. CNN's John Zarella is just outside our bureau in Miami, and of course it's building up out there. John, you've covered a lot of these. Is this a reminder of any in the past?
Well, I'm not sure it's a reminder of any. I think every one of them is tragically unique in its own way, Dave. I lived through many of them growing up here in Miami. I lived through Hurricane Betsy. I lived through Hurricane Donna. I lived through Hurricane Cleo. I remember huddling up with my parents listening to transistor radio about 5 miles from here over on Miami Beach. And they're all different. I covered many throughout the years, and they all present a unique set of problems. Some of them spawn a lot of tornadoes. Some of them have an incredible storm surge like Camille. Some of them take signs and bend them at 90-degree angles, and tornadoes that can take a wall off of a portable classroom but leave the other 3 walls standing and every single desk in that classroom simply sitting there as if it hadn't been moved. So they're all different. Tonight we're waiting for the winds to pick up. They have been gradually increasing, but nothing dramatic yet. With me is CNN's Charles Jaco, and Charles, you've been out and about tonight for the better part of the evening, and there's a lot of people off the streets, but there's a lot of people that probably have nowhere to go.
Miami, like every other major city, has a large homeless population. Excuse me, my voice is dying as the storm picks up. And a lot of those homeless were out on the streets, and Miami Mayor Xavier Suarez met with some of them tonight, trying to convince them that they need to get off the streets. He finally was able to convince them that they're going to get off and get to shelter. In fact, the mayor told us that was the most important thing for these men and women on the streets, to get to some sort of shelter.
Charlie, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. It seems like as far as shelters, as far as evacuation, as far as the things that people thought were logistically impossible to get people out of the beach, out of Key Biscayne, we've done well. But I know there's a lot of people that are recalcitrant, that are at home and don't want to be evacuated. There's some people right here. We think being out here in the open is probably one of the worst places you can be. If the tidal wave comes in at, the surge comes in at 9 to 13 feet, as they're predicting for the bay, these guys could be wiped out.
And it's not only they that could be wiped out, but people in their homes near the ocean. I remember one of our crews talked this afternoon, John, to some elderly people in Miami Beach, said, oh, we're going to sit here together in the lobby of the hotel that was maybe 50 feet from the ocean.
Sounds like the Richelieu Apartments during Camille in Pas Christian, I believe it was. We will, of course, be here throughout the evening, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to share with you, at least in terms of pictures, in the very near future. This is John Zarella and Charles Jaco reporting live from North Miami.
John and Charles in Miami, thank you very much for that report. Brian.
And we will continue to update you throughout the night. Hurricane Andrew, a very powerful storm. We feel like we should stay right on top of it, and that's what we're going to do here at CNN. Let's join World Report right now, already in progress.
This is CNN Breaking News.
And welcome to our viewers around the world. You're watching continuing coverage of Hurricane Andrew as it gets closer to shore.
Absolutely. I'm Dave Michaels, and Brian Christie is with me. We are only about an hour away from a fierce date with Miami. Hurricane Andrew is bearing down and is only about 20 miles off the coast. Gary Tuckman is live, standing by in Boca Raton, Florida. The wind has really increased. It looks bad, Gary.
Well, Dave, it would not be unfair to call these conditions atrocious right now. That's the situation in Boca Raton, a town in southern Palm Beach County, about 40 miles north of Miami, where the center of this hurricane is supposed to go over in about an hour. Right now, the winds are near hurricane force. Meteorologists are saying it's between 70 and 75 miles per hour. This flagpole behind me has been threatening to break off for the last couple of hours. We're a little concerned about it, but so far, everything here on this patio, on this condominium we're standing on, is hanging out pretty well. Some of the trees have fallen down, but other than that, things are doing pretty well here. Right next to us is the ocean. The water is whipping off the beach right now, hitting us in the face. It feels like glass pellets hitting us in the face. Throughout South Florida, people are glued to their radios, glued to their televisions. A lot of power is going out. Here in Boca Raton, it's almost a miracle that the power is still on. That's what one official just told me. He's deadly shocked about that. But the power is still on here in Boca Raton, but other parts of South Florida have lost their power. Lots of local stations here in South Florida have become mini CNNs, mini local CNNs. They're going live 24 hours. They just keep bringing news about the hurricane to tell people what's going on. All throughout this area, people are going into shelters. That is the safest place to be, especially if you live near the beach. There are still people. Right next to us is a condominium. It has 12 floors, with about 10 apartments in each floor. So with a little mathematics there, I estimate there are about 120 apartments. 14 apartments are still occupied. That's what authorities are telling us. They refuse to leave for various reasons. At this point, they don't have a choice. They're not being allowed to leave. Police have closed off the bridges that separate the beach from the mainland. And here in South Florida, the bridges that go over the Intracoastal are not the greatest spans to begin with. They're usually narrow and they're not particularly strong. And since South Florida hasn't had a direct hit from a hurricane in so many years, people are very concerned how those bridges are going to hold out. So people are here for the duration, and this is just the beginning, because within an hour, the strongest winds from Hurricane Andrew are expected to arrive here in South Florida. And one very kind of funny thing that strikes me, behind me is a swimming pool, and there's a sign next to the swimming pool that says, "Please shower before entering pool." It struck me as kind of funny on a night like this. This is Gary Tuckman, CNN Live in Boca Raton, Florida.
Gary, we know why you are on that beach, but are there other people there with you?
Dave, you'll have to excuse me. The winds have gusted to such a point where you, Dave Michaels, sound like a gust of wind to me and not a human voice. I really can't hear what you're saying, unfortunately.
All right, Gary Tuckman, we are happy to have you still up and visible. We have lost, apparently, our picture out of Miami, and we will be contacting them by phone. Brian.
Yes, that's right. Earlier we saw live reports from John Zarella and his colleagues in Miami, but the severity of the storm is such that we have asked them to go indoors because we don't want them to get hurt. Let's go now to John, who joins us now by phone in Miami. John?
Indeed, we are all in the Bureau. It is safe in here. The winds got to the point that those palm trees behind us, the major concern was that one of those palm trees would collapse, perhaps hit the satellite truck, knock the antenna down, and at that point we would not be able to get back to you with live pictures. We are going to effort every possible conceivable way to come up and give you a live picture during the eye of the storm as it passes over here. If it passes directly over us or anywhere near us, we may only be able to come up on the air for 5-10 minutes, depending on where we are in the eye of the storm. It looks as if it'll probably pass about 10 miles to the south of us, maybe 5 miles, 10 miles to the south of us. Anybody's guess, I suppose, at this point. But the winds are really howling out there. Everyone is in the CNN Miami Bureau. Everyone is safe, trying to dry out at this particular point, and just getting ready to break for the streets for just a few precious moments of that calm. Now, we're going to do that because that's what we're here for, to try and bring you those pictures. But many people, anybody who may be listening, who still has cable on down here, who's still on with power, which is probably very few people, should know that when that eye of the storm comes over, do not go outside. It is not over. You still got the whole backside of the hurricane, and when those winds come up, they don't come up slow and then build. They come up very strong, very quickly, and at least as severe, and some people say worse, than the front side of the hurricane. Brian?
John, it's amazing to all of us here at CNN in Atlanta that you still have electricity on there. Is there a point where the city actually turns it off or for safety reasons?
We have generator power here in our building, and that's why we're able to talk to you. That's why we were able to bring you those pictures from the satellite truck a half hour ago or so, simply because we have generator power that we're operating off of here at the Bureau. I've got a cellular phone sitting next to me. Just a few moments ago, everything went dark in the Bureau and then came back on again. Perhaps one of the generators tripped for a second. If we should lose the generators and lose everything here, at least I'll have a cellular phone to keep in touch with you folks there in Atlanta. Brian?
Okay, John Zarella and his colleagues standing by live. We'll continue to give us updates throughout the night. We are staying with this storm. You are going to hear it right here on CNN. This is the place to be for all the information you need. Let's go now to Dave.
Thank you, Brian. CNN meteorologist Valerie Voss joins us now, and she has the latest picture of what exactly Andrew looks like. Val.
Well, Dave, we have been watching Andrew move purposefully toward the Florida coast over the last 12 to 24 hours. And as you can see, it is drawing very near. Winds are still at 140 miles an hour, which is approximately, 120 knots. The center of the system now less than 20 miles, or for our international viewers, about 36 kilometers off the Florida coast. Best guess at this point, this eye, which is now reported to be about 20 nautical miles wide, will move on shore right in the Fort Lauderdale to Cutler Ridge area, which is right in the Biscayne Bay region. And of course, it is going to bring a huge storm surge, torrential downpours. Rainfall amounts will be very high. There are, of course, hurricane warnings in effect all the way from the Florida East Coast, Vero Beach, down to the Dry Tortugas. Possible rainfall could be easily 6 inches. We're saying now between 6 and 10 inches across the southern half of Florida. Lesser amounts as you go farther northward. There are tropical storm warnings, hurricane watches in effect further to the north. The storm surge will occur not only on the east coast as the system moves on shore with those northerly winds on easterly winds on the north side, but as it moves across Florida on the bottom side, the south side of the storm, we will have westerly winds. So the storm surge both coasts, either side, anywhere from the 6 to 12 foot range. And unfortunately, this system right now about an hour away from landfall, high tide in the Miami area 5:01, so they should occur simultaneously, which means the storm surge could be a couple of feet higher even. We'll keep watching it for you. The news continues now.
Thank you, Val. Jamie McIntyre is in a calm eye up in Maryland, Camp Springs, Maryland, at the backup Hurricane Center. Jamie, what are they saying up there?
Well, Dave, this is the National Weather Service's Plan B. The forecasters here at this facility just outside Washington, D.C. are capable of exactly duplicating the work of the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida, and all indications are that they'll have to begin doing that very shortly, probably within the hour, possibly within a few minutes, as the Hurricane Center may be forced to shut down in Coral Gables in the face of those sustained 140-mile-per-hour winds. This is the first time that the operations have had to be shifted away from Coral Gables, although this backup plan has been in effect for quite a while. Already, some of the staff from the National Hurricane Center has been shifted up here. Several of the forecasters, including the number 2 forecaster, Jerry Gerald, who's the deputy director of the National Hurricane Center, and it's expected that he will provide the next briefing update on the hurricane from here just outside Washington at 5 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's the latest from here. Jamie McIntyre, CNN, live at the National Meteorological Center in Camp Springs, Maryland.
Very good. Thank you, Jamie. Brian.
And for our viewers in the United States, we're going to take a short break, and when we return, we will return to big story already in progress. We'll be back.
What we're looking at, and I'm not picking on latitude 25.4 here, it's just that's the one that's been coming up over and over and over again in the last... If the hurricane continues to move along latitude 25.4, I've kind of approximated what the eye would look like here. If I can just get back to my mode here. Here we go. Whoops. Sorry. Right there, if the eye is going along that, it's going to go right through the Perrine-Cutler Ridge area. Now, that would be the eye, okay? Now, the worst damaging winds are, of course, just to the north of the eye, so we'd be looking at up in here in this region. This is where the worst winds would be, but probably a wider path than that, so we're going all the way from Perrine-Cutler Ridge up to, say, over Key Biscayne and just about up to south of 836 a little bit. But actually the hurricane force winds, let me correct myself, go a little bit farther north than this. So we'd probably be looking at the worst situation somewhere in this yellow and blue area right in here, because the diameter of the eye itself is 10 miles and the hurricane force winds go out a little bit farther. So we might even be looking a little bit farther than this. I'm trying to get my scale. Forgive me, I just made this map a little while ago and I'm trying to get my scale right here. So right now it looks like this would be the worst area right here with the winds over 100 miles per hour perhaps, and then we get up here and we're talking about winds perhaps 90 miles per hour and then dropping off rapidly as we go north into Broward County. So I'm going to keep updating this, and again, I'm not picking on that particular latitude, but that's where it is. It may change, it may go a little bit north, may go a little bit south, and I'll refine that technique a little bit more too. But it looks like near the center and just to the north is the worst part. I'm not saying that Homestead and Florida City and Key Largo isn't going to feel it either, because they'll be getting some strong winds and possibly some hurricane force winds too, but the strongest winds are going to be north of the center, it appears right now.
All right, Don, thank you very much. And I am rejoined now by Ann Bishop. And Ann, right now, let's go out to Miami Beach where Louis Aguirre is standing by. And I think the weather is taking a turn for the worse, is it not, Louis?
It certainly seems that way, Michael. It was shortly after midnight that I think we first started feeling the first effects of Andrew. The wind just started to pick up considerably. As does the surf. You can see the waves. I don't know if you can, Serge, can you pan over there and can catch the pier over here at South Point Park? The waves just crashing onto that pier. I don't suspect it's going to be here after the storm, the full brunt of the storm hits. And the winds, we're told, are anywhere between 30 and 40 miles per hour. Those are tropical storm winds, and we can certainly and definitely feel that the rain is just starting to come down right now. Take a look at these palm trees over here. Look at what the wind is doing to that. Nasty weather. You wouldn't think anybody would want to be out in this weather, but we were just out on that pier, the same pier we were showing just a minute ago, and there are quite a few people gathered there, thrill seekers who want to see Andrew firsthand. Not a safe thing to do. We understand there are quite a few thrill seekers on the beach tonight who have not heeded those evacuation warnings. This is not a good place to be. As you can see, the wind is just starting to pick up even more and more as I'm talking to you right now. And, and this isn't the worst of it. This is only the beginning.
on that pier. If you can hear me, I know it's very noisy out there, but I've been out on that pier, and on a very nice day, but when a little storm comes by, that is a wooden pier, and it gets a little slippery. I'm sure that right now, with the wind pelting down and the winds, I'm sure that's pretty dangerous out there.
Well, actually, the pier is the exterior of the pier. The exterior of the pier is wood, but there's concrete on there. It does get slippery, and there are rocks that try to protect it, but the waves are crashing up over the rocks and hitting the pier. So yes, it is very dangerous, Michael. And as I said, there are a couple, at least 3 or 4 thrill seekers that have been out there waiting for Andrew to hit.
Well, they may get a real thrill if they stay out there.
I'm sorry?
I said they may get a real thrill if they stay out there too long.
Yeah, no thank you.
I should say not. And you watch out for yourself too, Louis.
Okay.
Thank you. Louis Aguirre reporting live from South Miami Beach, where the weather, as we can see, Ann, is
getting nasty. It's even nasty here. It's getting pretty nasty outside. It's raining and winding. Linda Hushin is standing by at the Broward Center, and she has a report for us. Linda?
Well, I'm told, Ann, that about 21,000 people have now turned out to Broward shelters. They have room for 100,000 people. There are 37 shelters. 4 of them are no longer available. I'll tell you a little bit more about that a little later on. Of course, it does seem a little late to be turning out to a shelter, but they say they will keep the doors open for just as long as they can. So if you're a straggler and need to get over there, do it now. And this is what we found at a shelter that we visited a little bit earlier on tonight.
We have just opened the food line. Whoever is not eaten, please line up outside in the food line.
Weather-wise, it might still be called the calm before the real storm, but shelter-wise, it's anything but calm.
The people are not under control. They're out of control, most definitely. And that's what makes it so difficult, because everybody's doing their own thing, and everybody's getting angry.
Well, maybe not everybody. Most are just trying to make the best of an uncomfortable and unfamiliar situation.
I've never been to a hurricane, honey, and I am petrified of it. I said, let me get out of that house where I was in. I got to go to a shelter. I didn't care where, just so long as it was to a shelter where I'd be safe.
And so much for those vacation plans.
We were hoping to spend the time on the beach, you know, sun, but didn't happen. It's not today. Hasn't happened yet.
Get yourself out of the house and to a shelter immediately.
Volunteers and staffers at the Broward Emergency Operations Center are still urging more people to evacuate to shelters and still answering non-stop questions.
They're getting a little bit more harried, a little bit more urgent now because we're getting really down to the nitty-gritty.
They say the most anxious conversations are with the elderly.
They like to give a very lengthy description of what they've done and how they've done it, and they want so badly to have someone say, you're going to be fine, nothing is going to happen to you.
Now, the shelter that we showed you in that piece was at Dillard High School. That has now been evacuated because of structural problems. I was told earlier tonight there was some concern because part of that high school is under construction, and I suppose they felt that perhaps that wasn't the safest place to be. All of the people who were in there have now been taken to another shelter. 3 of them are filled to capacity now. You might want to make note of these. Deerfield Beach High School, Sheridan Hills Elementary School, and Sheridan Park Elementary. We're also hearing, Ann, about the first power outage up here in Fort Lauderdale. It is reported on Northwest 33rd Street, 2 blocks west of 441. We don't know very much about it right now or how much of an area that it is impacting at the moment.
Well, it's probably wind damage would be my guess, Linda, because I don't think it's raining that hard in that area yet, although it is getting pretty nasty out. You know, it's interesting. You had told us in the beginning that they were repairing the roof at Dillard. I was surprised they had picked it for a shelter in the first place, because if it's not completed and you get strong winds, that roof's going to come right off.
Well, exactly. And there had been some concern and there was some doubt as to whether or not they were going to open Dillard High School at all as an evacuation center. At the last minute, they decided that they would go ahead and do it. And a great number of people turned out. There were more than 1,000 people there tonight. And then as soon as the winds picked up, I guess they started seeing that there were going to be problems there, which they had already anticipated to some level, and they just got out of there.
Linda, let me ask you, the one young woman said that everybody was doing their own thing and that there was no control. What was happening that upset her? Because everybody seemed fine.
Well, I think that
Again, it was a very unfamiliar situation for everyone, and perhaps expectations were higher than what they actually found when they got to the shelter. Very few volunteers on hand to help control the crowds, and I think that perhaps a few people just lost their temper when things weren't going exactly the way they anticipated they were going to go at a shelter. But I think everybody has to realize they must be very patient. No one has gone through this before down here, and everybody kind of needs to stick together here and weather it out together.
Well, maybe a lot of people went to the shelter thinking this would be some kind of entertainment. They would be totally taken care of.
Perhaps.
It was free and provided by the government, and why not?
I think you're right.
How did they transport them? How did they get 1,000 people from one shelter to another?
Well, they brought in buses. Most of the buses in this area stopped running and transporting people to the emergency shelters around 9:30 tonight. But in order to transport all of those people over there, I guess they had to call them back out again.
Linda, they were taken to Boyd Anderson there in Broward. I wonder do you know how many people are at Boyd Anderson? If they took 1,000 from Dillard,
no.
There must be quite a few people at Boyd Anderson.
I don't really know, but I imagine, I was told at Dillard itself that although they had 1,000 people there, they were given 7,000 applications. Now, whether or not they really were going to be able to fit all of those people into Dillard High School is another question, but perhaps at a school of that size, they could accommodate perhaps 2,000. But I'm not sure exactly how many people are out there or were out there before the Dillard people were transported.
All right, Linda Hushin, reporting from our Broward Bureau. Thank you very much.
We have Sue Keenan now on the phone reporting from the Bahamas, where it should be, if not past them, certainly well on its way. What's happening there, Sue?
Well, Ann, it seems we've just experienced the height of Andrew's fury. High winds, heavy rains. This has been going on for more than 2 hours. And this is not the 50-mile-an-hour fury that had been predicted. It definitely is easing. It's just, that's why I say it, the wind levels are not as high as had been predicted.
A little look at what you might be seeing if you were in Florida last night. Again, the storm, it's feared, could reach Category 5, which is a very dangerous storm indeed. Winds about 150 miles an hour.
As of now, Category 3. This is ABC's World News Now.
6 News Hurricane Alert.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Charna Davis. It seems as if everybody all over the state is awake, waiting to find out what is happening as Hurricane Andrew is beginning to slam into the South Florida area. Right now, our Pamela Kister is standing by live with all the latest information.
Charna, it is so close right now. The latest coordinates will show you that Hurricane Andrew is 20 miles east-southeast of Miami. It looks like at this point it's moving into the Princeton area. The winds right now, the top winds are still 140 miles an hour, so this still is a Category 4 hurricane. It's not weakening. It's not going to weaken at all. In fact, it may just weaken a little bit as it moves on shore, and then it's going to regain strength again as it moves into the Gulf, and that's going to happen probably about midday tomorrow. But moving very quickly west at 18 miles an hour. The only way that's going to help at all is it looks like it's going to bring them a little bit less rainfall, but the winds are amazing. 140 mile an hour winds. It is so close. The latest coordinates right now, of course, are 25 for north and 80 west, and we have a radar picture tonight that is so impressive that is coming out of Miami. You can see MIA is Miami. This is Palm Beach area right here, and this is the eye that we oftentimes talk about. As you can see, there's no wind right here, lots of wind, lots of rain and thunderstorms, and you can see it is just approaching the coast right now. This is what we call the eye wall. It continues to move to the west at 18 miles an hour. They are seeing some very strong thunderstorms. We have had wind gust reports up to 76 miles an hour, and it's going to get so much worse in the next couple of hours. Again, the maximum sustained winds right now are 140 miles an hour with Hurricane Andrew. Let's go to our local radar picture because we need to keep you up to date on what's going on here. This is ground clutter, but we are seeing a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms. We are going to get our share of rain tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. Again, we could see some localized amounts of 3 inches here, maybe even 5 to 6 inches in some areas where it's real localized. But the big problem for us tonight, and we need to keep it in mind, is that tornado watch that's in effect until 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Please keep that in mind. That is in Osceola, Brevard, and Indian River County. And again, that's till 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. We will keep you up to date on the very latest with Hurricane Andrew. Let's go back to Charna.
Well, so many people are calling in and they're asking, what should we do? Should we go out? Is it okay to drive to work in the morning? What do you say to them?
Well, I think the biggest problem tomorrow morning driving to work is going to be traffic, and it's also going to be because the roads are going to be slick. We are looking at our own rain and scattered showers and thunderstorms again. There is the potential, certainly the great potential for tornadoes here tomorrow morning, so take it easy on the roads. Again, we are going to see our own rainfall amounts. It will probably be common tomorrow to see 3 inches. As far as wind is concerned, I know we've had dozens of phone calls on that, and we're looking at wind gusts possibly up to 50 miles an hour, but more likely to be about 30 to 35 miles an hour. So just be real careful tomorrow morning, and if it looks bad, just take the day off and stay home.
Thank you, Pamela. Let's go right now. We have a live picture to show you, which is a camera actually set up on Cocoa Beach. Our photographer Joe Carroll has set that up, and you can see already the waves are starting to come in here in Central Florida, so far away, so you can imagine what's going on in South Florida. I can tell you that about 15 minutes ago I spoke with my sister, who is in Kendall, which is South Florida, South Miami, and she said that basically we know more than they do. A lot of the areas in Miami have power outages, and she kept asking me, is it over? Is the worst over? So absolutely not, it's not, but the people there don't know it yet. Let's take a look at some of the latest video we have out of Miami, the streets and what's going on there. As you see, let's take a look right now and listen to the wind, and you can get an idea of what it feels like down there. Now imagine that as it's whipping around you. When I spoke to my sister, she said, I could hear a tree limb here or there or something hitting the house. People aren't really sure what it is, but this is what it sounds like, and the worst hasn't even come yet. Officials are bracing for up to $15 billion. That's B, with $1 billion worth of damage in the Miami area, in the South Florida area. But they do say that they are very glad that the strongest part of the hurricane is not headed directly to the Florida Keys, because there are so many people stranded there, and they would be in much greater danger than the people in Greater Miami. So we're going to keep an eye on everything for you, and we'll be back here in about a half hour or so. But for now, we'll go back to CBS New York and Up to the Minute.
Says all are being turned away.
A lot of rain, a lot of wind. We still have an incredibly large number of people who are coming out here, who are trying to get out to Key Biscayne. They're trying to go out onto the causeway and look at what the weather is like out there. You know, we're turning everybody back at this point and telling them they can't come out.
Do you have any surfers, people like that, who are trying to get...
Absolutely not. The beaches were cleared at somewhere around, I'd say about 7 o'clock this evening, and nobody else has been allowed out there.
But nobody trying to sneak on with a board and saying, hey, just let me catch this great wave?
No, but as you can see from some of the cars in line here, as we're talking, there are still people who are trying to come out here that we're having to turn them back. But at this point, we're getting ready to pull away from the toll booth, so they're going to be taking their chances if they go out on the Key Biscayne. The high bridge, the Powell Bridge, is no longer safe to cross with this wind velocity. So we are not recommending that anybody come out here.
Have you seen anything just recently since you've been here, things deteriorating, things blowing, branches breaking away, anything like that?
No, nothing here at the toll booth where we've been, and we have not been out any further out on the island at this point. So,
as far as you know it, people have pretty much cleared off the island?
I'd say we've got about a 90% evacuation of the island. The place is really almost like a ghost town. We went all through the residential section. We found very, very few people who are remaining out there.
Reporter Don Dare of WCIX-TV is in Fort Lauderdale, and just a few moments ago he filed this report by phone about Andrew's effect on that city.
Don's going to join us again, this time by telephone. What's it look like right now there, Don?
Well, Diana, I'm in the Broward Bureau. We're in the 17th floor of the 110 tower. I'm looking out the window, looking north, and I can see east. We were trying to catch some sleep. The rumbling of the windows woke me up. Oh, saw a huge flash out the window. I'm looking over along Las Olas Boulevard in the New River. It appears as if the lights are out along Las Olas Boulevard, just east of 3rd Avenue, east of the Broward County Courthouse. You can see a lightning show outside. It's not lightning from the lightning, but it's the wind striking some of the FP&L lines, and there's a flash here and a flash here. I can see perhaps as far north as North Lauderdale. Just about 5 minutes ago, I saw a huge flash in that area. It appears as if the lights are definitely still on in the majority of Fort Lauderdale anyway. Looking out west, I can see the lights are still on. To the east, the street lights at least are still on, except for that one section of downtown Fort Lauderdale along Las Olas Boulevard. The trees are not bent over. It's just the fronds that are taking the brunt of the wind at this moment. But it's quite a spectacular show that I see out the window here in the 17th floor.
Don, it's a very descriptive view of what's been going on. Certainly that's the best way for those of you who are at home to view that. No real signs of real damage that you can see from your vantage point.
No, fortunately none so far. That's what we're hoping, at least up in this neck of the woods, is that the damage is not going to be that bad. I don't see anything blowing around. I'm peeping out over the window here as I look directly down. I don't see anything in front of the street in front of me in 6th Street that looks like it is damaged. The trees are still intact. We have some 20-foot, 30-foot royal palm trees in front of us, and they're all okay so far. I think what we're going to try to do in a few minutes is stick our heads outside at least, and remarkably, I did see a car about 5, 6, 7 minutes ago, a car driving down near Las Olas Boulevard, but no, fortunately no damage yet.
You just watched a portion of the newscast from WCIX-TV in Miami. Well, despite Andrew's approach, some people are still trying to ride out the storm. Dr. Steve Greenberg of WCIX has this report.
Come like crazy, and it's super windy, and then all of a sudden it kind of slows down, and right now it just kind of eased down just a little bit. We've turned our light off that was on me just so you can get a better idea of what the things look like behind me. I don't know if it's helping the situation or not helping the situation at all, but again, the trees have slowed, the wind has slowed down, there's less rain, and again, it's very deceptive. I could see how someone could easily be fooled into thinking that this is nothing to worry about, but the reality is, of course, that Andrew is coming. Again, while I'm talking to you, it can be changing. I can feel another, here comes some more wind right now, and it's picking up again. So it seems to be coming and going every few seconds. Now, I have some tape to give you a little idea about what's going on here on Brickell Ave, about some of the holdouts, and if we could go to that, I think you'd have a better idea of what's happening here on Brickell Ave.
Most of the lights of Brickell Ave apartments are out, and the lawn furniture hasn't decided to go for a swim. It's just being stowed in the pool in hopes it won't blow away. Terraces are empty, there's no traffic, and at first glance you'd think Brickell Ave is deserted. But there are some folks who are going against the best advice and have decided to ride out Andrew.
I feel like this is as safe as anywhere else, because we've got a stairwell out here that's got these thick concrete posts at all four corners, concrete block, and I thought I was safer than being in some house inland where you don't know if a pine tree is going to come crashing through your window or not.
Pat Murphy, his girlfriend, and 2 cats have the hurricane shutters in place and everything off the terrace. Oscar Corbella has also decided to ride out Andrew. His kitchen is doubling as a bedroom tonight, and Oscar is glued to his TV. Looks like he's getting the best information available, so why is he staying in an evacuation zone?
I've been told that the building is very safe. I mean, that is no problem to stay here, so why not?
There are a little more than 100 families living in this building on Brickell, and about 11 of them have decided to spend the night right here, Andrew or no Andrew. But if things get really rough, they may end up spending the night right here in the stairwell. You see that spot right down there? That's where I'm going to be camped out.
I'm hoping to sleep through it. We're so darn tired, and it's going to be dark, and we're just going to go, when it starts, we're going to go into the stairwell.
Our coverage of Hurricane Andrew continues right after a break.
You are watching CBS News, up to the minute.
Florida coast takes a direct hit from one of the fiercest U.S. hurricanes in decades.
This is CNN Breaking News.
And good morning to all of you. I'm Brian Christie at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
And I'm Dave Michaels. This is CNN's continuing coverage of Hurricane Andrew's advance. The storm is now moving faster toward the west than it has since it was born several days ago. And the potentially most dangerous part of the swirling storm is making contact with the Gold Coast of Florida. Heavy winds and rains are pounding Miami Beach and points nearby. Power is out in various places throughout the area. Sand is quickly washing over the coastal highway, and palm trees are bending like rubber. More than 1 million people in the region have been moved away from Andrew's force.
Well, earlier we saw live reports from Bob Sheets, the director of the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida. Because of the storm, the severity of the storm, of course, we cannot get a live picture out of there, but we do have Bob by phone. Bob, can you are now bearing the brunt of the storm as we speak. Can you give us an update?
Yes, we are in the north eye wall. That's the strongest part of the hurricane, and in fact, our building is shaking pretty good here right at the moment. I'm watching our dials. We're experiencing 100-knot winds sustained. That's about 115 miles per hour, and we had a gust up to 152. That's on top of our building, of course, not right at the ground level there, and we've lost some equipment. We had a big flood, so we don't know what we lost on the roof of the building here.
Bob, let's talk about pressure for a second. Has it intensified at all?
Well, the last recon that went through there said that the pressure had started to deepen again as it approached the coast. It had weakened a little bit from its peak strength out there when it had a 922 millibar pressure and 150 mile per hour winds there, sustained 150 mile per hour winds there, and it weakened up to 940 something, 947 I think, and now the last recon went through had about 931 again, so we are in the Category 4 status there, up in the upper end of the scale for Category 3 or in the lower end of the scale for Category 4 hurricane.
Bob, we're looking at a picture right now, and it shows the hurricane as it's heading straight toward Miami. Can you give us a prediction of exactly where the eye might strike?
Well, it's already here. As a matter of fact, the eye is on the coast right at this moment. Just to the center of the eye is coming across the Homestead area. That's the Homestead Air Force Base, the city of Homestead right now. And then the north eye wall is right here at Coral Gables, right where we're at this moment. I see the gust just went up there now to 120-some knots. See, that's double. So that would be 140 knots, it looks like. So it's really blowing out there, and as I say, our building is shaking.
Okay, Bob Sheets by telephone, the director of the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables. Thank you very much. Let's go to Dave.
Thank you, Brian. All night long, CNN's John Zarella has been with us live with live pictures from Miami. The pictures have stopped for the moment, but John is on the phone with us. John, what can you tell us now?
Well, Dave, following up on what Bob Sheets had said, we're about 20 miles as the crow flies north of where Dr. Sheets is. So that means we're about 20 miles outside of the northern end of the eye. The wind is howling outside. The building is, the doors are rattling. We're all up here on the third floor. Are you still with me, Dave?
I sure am, John.
Okay, I thought we might have lost you there for a second. Everybody is hunkered down here. I guess as you heard from Dr. Sheets, the radar dome apparently fell off the roof of the National Hurricane Center, and the wind gust at one point up to 150 miles an hour plus. We're not getting those kinds of winds here, we don't think, but who knows? Nobody's out there trying to figure it out. We're on the third floor, and in the stairwell, some of the people, some of us are in the hallway. The doors to the office building that I'm looking at that face east are rattling and shaking, so I would assume that they may have lost some windows in there because it sounds like the wind is whipping around inside that office there. At this point, I suspect that we will not get the eye wall at all. There will be no eye where we are. We're on the north side of the storm, the worst side of the hurricane, outside of the eye itself. And so we will not get a chance to come up in the eye to give you any pictures because we're not going to get it this far north. David?
All right, John Zarella talking to us live by phone from North Miami. Thank you, John. Brian.
This is a major hurricane, and I think we should realize the severity of it all. We have somebody here with a picture of it, an incredible picture. CNN senior meteorologist Valerie Voss is here. Valerie?
Brian, this of course is a loop over the last about 4 hours of Hurricane Andrew, and as you can see, picture perfect, a textbook case. Wind still at about 140 miles an hour, moving west at 18. You heard Dr. Sheets tell you it is over the region right now. The center should pass right around Homestead, Florida, and we've been monitoring observations out of these weather observation sites. And Homestead, Florida, not reporting. They evacuated that area, but Dr. Sheets mentioned a gust to 140 miles an hour, or 140 knots. That, folks, is 161 miles per hour. In Miami, they're up to about 70 miles an hour. At Tamiami, up around 80-mile-an-hour gusts. The storm surge, of course, now what we are looking for as this system moves onshore, the center right there at the Miami area. We're talking about anywhere from 7 to 14 feet, not only on the east coast of Florida, but the west as well. The circulation counterclockwise. We get the storm surge north of the system on the east coast and south of the system on the west coast as it moves across rather rapidly over the next several hours. Rainfall, of course, will be heavy with this system. We're being conservative when we say 6 inches or more. If it does continue to move rapidly, that's the good news. It'll move across the region quickly, less rain, but it could be easily upwards of 10 inches in some areas favored by it. There are not only hurricane warnings and watches, but tropical storm warnings that stretch all the way up the coast to the Titusville area. The system still tracking just about westward. You see very little variation of the system on its track. Its intensity very similar to that of Hurricane Hugo a few years ago, just slightly less severe. We're going to keep watching it for you. The news continues now with Dave and Brian.
And if you're wondering where a lot of those people are that are still there in Dade County, apparently 150 shelters filled the capacity, Dave, so far.
Incredibly, not only is this storm hitting Miami, but just 4 minutes ago, high tide also hit Miami.
Exactly right.
We will continue our coverage of Hurricane Andrew right after this.